to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talk and real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talk and real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talk and real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talk and real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready.
Boom!
We're out here.
And just like a red, white, and blue phoenix rising from the ashes of political bipartisanship, we are back to Salt of the Streets podcast.
This is Saturday, April 17th, 1:33 p.m., episode 106.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Salt of the Streets podcast, your one and only source for social and political commentary on all the weekly news, pop culture, and sports that you can handle. The best part about the whole deal, it's all built from the ground up for people like you and me, the everyday normal person. So come down and join us as we discuss life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continue our endless endeavor to bridge the gap between people and information. As always, we are your hosts. I am Colin.
I am Donovan.
And coming up on this week's show, we've got a jam-packed show with full of geopolitical implications. My favorite thing to say. We are going to be talking about some of the stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to be talking about the southern border and the continued crisis that now seems to be exponentially worse than it was, and we're broadening the horizons.
Over just like 2 weeks, it was like
yeah, it hasn't been that long since we talked about this.
The last time we were here, you were, it was like an offhanded thing that you were mentioning. You were like, oh hey, also Ukraine just started its draft. Like that's really weird. And
That's
now
weird.
we're like, oh shit, more troops on the border than when they annexed Crimea. That's weird.
That's weird. Naval ships coming in there.
That's
telling
weird.
the Americans not to send naval ships over there, and then us not doing that. So we'll get into some of that. Then we got some executive order stuff on
I hate
guns.
this administration.
And it's just bad, man. Kamala Harris is in charge, so it's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. Did you hear her talk about going down to the southern border, or actually that she's not going to be?
She's
gonna
not
be going.
going.
She's going to be going further past that,
going to
so she
Mexico
doesn't have
City.
to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
It's-
I definitely
it'll be great.
have. I may or may not, but definitely do have some note cards about some questions that Jen Psaki was asked as to why Kamala Harris wasn't going to the southern border and her fucking
Show people that
bullshit.
fat stack you got there.
Yeah, her bullshit justification as to the fat stack. This is
Yeah. This is today. This is today's
it's
episode
all
right
here.
there.
Yeah, this is all us, baby.
Boom.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm not gonna get trapped in this nihilistic pole like we did last episode. Most episodes, by the time we finish, I feel good. I feel better about the shit show that is our American life.
Yeah.
Last week, I felt like just down afterwards. You know, it was tough. Mind you, I did have a massive headache too,
Well, and then we went and got those fucking rad steaks. So
and that made life way better.
yeah, shout out to Crabtree.
Yeah, this wonderful family-owned restaurant in our area called Crabtree, and I mean it's about the only place I know of that you can go get a steakhouse quality level steak
It was fire.
where you don't have to pay $100 a piece for it.
Yeah.
You know, you're paying like 50 to 60, but still,
These
it
are,
is great.
just so everyone knows,
Get a nice
this
close
is
up on that one
some
there.
Monks in Discretion.
I'll pull it up over here.
So
Boom.
I don't know where
Look at
I'm pouring
that.
to, so I'm just going to pour right here.
The return of the Monk's Indiscretion.
Yeah, so we haven't had these in, I mean, probably 2 years at least.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I had to
Um,
make sure that when I bought these, that I taste tested them beforehand, so I knew there wasn't poison.
Yeah.
So I drank a 4-pack last week.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
It looks lighter than before.
Oh man.
That taste. Okay.
It's
I can't even
individual.
say this because my beer taste has grown so much since the last time that we had this.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like so much better than I remember it being.
Mm.
I just remember it being so intense. Like so intense, you know?
It's so good.
It feels like, okay, so just so everybody knows, this beer, Monks and Discretion, this is our beautiful, it's a 10% beer right there.
there we go. Sorry, I screwed
what
you
are you
up.
doing? What are you doing to
There
me?
you go.
10% beer right there. So this used to be made by a local brewery in Paulsville called Sound Brewery, which made fucking great beers.
Yep.
And they
Great
had,
Belgian.
yeah,
With Belgian
inspired.
inspired. Yeah, like their base malt
Yeah.
was a Belgian malt, which was nobody else does it around here.
Right.
It's all just the plain 2-row.
And they had a restaurant for a little while that sold some pretty good food, and then they closed, and so they obviously stopped selling beer because they stopped making beer.
Yeah, they kind of
But you
the
said-
restaurant venture I think overextended them a little too much, and then with everything with the pandemic came out, and
Yeah.
that was like the final nail in their coffin.
Serve at 48 degrees Fahrenheit.
Perfect.
That's what this says.
That's where we're at.
Yeah,
I promise.
So, now it's done by Echoes Brewing Company, which is on Viking. Okay.
It's
Word.
the same. So you remember when they used to be down in the hole,
yes.
right? And then they expanded and bought the production facility on the other side of the road, up top of the hill.
Yes, yes.
And then
with the orange cover.
yeah, and then when Campana's went under and that it sat vacant for a while, they bought that place and then got into that realm, got rid of their place down in the hole, sold it to another brewery that was local called Rainy Days, which is still
Right,
there and still
right.
kicking ass with their beers.
You need to go there, man.
Yeah, it's a good spot. They got
Nice, that tap room. Yeah.
Yep, right down there. Parking can be a little tough sometimes, but their beers are great.
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of canning and stuff too. But anyways, inevitably sound went defunct because they just. I think it was the restaurant that probably between the restaurant and then the COVID on top.
Right.
That was just it. And
well, and the restaurant was like just okay. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't amazing, you know. It was pretty good. Was the thing like, so.
But so at the end of the day, they had to
Yeah.
lose their tap room because they had to close the main building.
Right.
And they still kept some production going up there for a while because I was still seeing sound bottles being,
Bottles and
you know,
stuff
out
at
there. But
the-
it was a limited selection. It was like 2 or 3 different kinds maybe. But I think what happened was, I haven't got the full story. I'm getting this like third hand from a coworker of mine who knows all the owners and stuff
Yeah.
like this. But I think
Know a guy who knows a guy.
yeah, they
talked
found
to the
essentially
guy.
an investor to start the company, essentially to create a company
Oh, Angel
that we
stepped in.
call Echoes Brewing.
Yeah.
And the old owner and brewmaster stayed on as the brewmaster, hence he could make Monks Indiscretion again.
Big
and
fan.
I'm a huge fan. It's great. I like the new look on the cans. I like the fact that they don't just come in 22-ounce bottles anymore.
The 16s are nice.
The 16 is perfect. You get a nice full pint out of it, and that's all you really need when you're talking about 10%
Dude.
beer, unless you're trying to have that kind of night.
When you were like, bro, 22 of the Monks Indiscretion is like will do you good.
That's a commitment.
I once drank just one time 2 22s.
Yeah, me too.
Oh
I
yeah,
did
and I
that.
was shithoused.
Yep.
That will do it.
That's all it takes.
It's just all the sugar and everything in there. It's
Yep.
so intense, bro. It gets you really fucked up.
It's a very rich beer.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So as you guys, Colin showed it already, but yeah, the color on it is, I mean, it's magnificent.
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
Ooh.
In a Salt of the Streets glass right there.
Hard,
you see that?
Laser etched.
Beautiful.
That's how we do things around here.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we do have all shirt sizes in stock.
Merch.
currently. Anybody who wants to purchase T-shirts, we can ship them out for $5. I can also deliver them to you. You can pick them up whenever you want. We can take custom orders. Those obviously take a little bit of time. I got to get the thing in. I got to get the piece in and then print it on there. But yeah, like I said, I'm gonna look at some tank tops and do some of that to see if we can get some SOS tank tops going because I think that will be the key.
And if you're waiting for a piece of merch that we don't have, let us know what you're looking for. We'll find a way to make it for you.
I'll find it, baby. If you
we
even
are
have
nothing else, we are fabricators, bro.
Yeah, if you have a thing that you already own that you want a Salt of the Streets logo on, you can send it to me or bring it to me, and I will put a Salt of the Streets logo on there for you.
Definitely do that.
Any of that, whatever you want, any of those things. I really want patches, like embroidered patches.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna start calling some embroider companies. I've only looked a couple places online, and they've all been like, "We can do it for $15 a patch. You can eat my dick. I buy them online for $7. Like if I can buy a patch from somebody online for $7, there's no way they're
Yep.
paying $15 for it. They're paying like $2 for it. So that's what I'm
that.
saying. That's what I'm saying. So I definitely know that I can get bulk Salt of the Streets patches because I want a fucking big patch on the back of my carrier that sells Salt
was
of
just
the
gonna
Streets.
say, like,
that's what I want.
Our color team is perfect for your carrier.
Yes.
We're gonna have to because somehow or other this has turned into a partly 2A podcast
know.
over the years, and I don't hate that. And I think we should
Never
probably
would've
embrace
predicted
that portion of our listenership / viewership, and we should
Yeah.
make a couple multicam style stickers and patches too with our logo. I bet you that would be dope.
My friend Jacob
That
would
way, at
definitely
least-
wear one of those.
Yeah, at least for the tight crew, so we could throw it on our
Yeah.
on our plate carriers.
Yeah, so look out for that soon. I am very, very interested in that, very motivated towards it. So we will have embroidered patches very soon. Even if they only come in iron-on, I'll put
Yeah.
them on Velcro at work. I'll make the Velcro part myself. If I can just get the embroidered patch,
Yep.
it doesn't even need to have adhesive on the back. Like I can beam this, I can do all that shit. I just need the patch.
Yep.
So,
I
exactly.
gotta know a guy.
That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna ask Tim on Monday because I think that he's got to have. I know that there's
He's
a
gotta
woman.
have contacts.
I know there's a woman in the building that does embroidery, but like mostly clothing and shit like that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know that she does patches. We'll see. We'll see what's up. I'm gonna get some fucking patches because I want Salt of the Streets patches
Hard yes.
bad.
God, that would be so cool.
That's what I'm saying. So this week,
Goals.
as Colin said, we got a lot of big things going on. I want to give a quick shout out to Swab Blended, Paul for the haircut. Quick shout out to Location Skate Shop opening today down at downtown Birmingham on 4th Street. Go down there, get yourself a new board, get some gear, get some merch, get all the things. Love it. Big fan of what they're doing. So
We did it in the pre-show, but I want to show this picture again
There it
because
is.
it is just fire.
go down
Man, look
and
at that.
have Paul cut your hair.
So
Yes.
good.
Yes.
So good.
When he was done, I was like laughing almost. I was like, bro, this goes hard as fuck. Like, it's like, this is some old school, like, I'm going to cut you in the street shit. I was like, this is like, it's
Ooh,
gangster.
yeah.
It's very G. Yeah, so I'm a big fan. Big fan of that.
Like 50s G.
I told Paul that when we were making it big, I was like, I'm telling you, bro, one day I'm going to be flying you out all over the country because I need a haircut. I was like, we're going to be on a speaking tour at different colleges or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I got to fly Paul out here like I'm looking
Yep.
scraggly. It's like, that's where we're going to be at, bro.
It'll be a multi-month tour, and we got to have 2-week haircuts on the day. On the 2 weeks.
That hard part grows out quick. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, bro.
So,
I trimmed up the beard a little bit this morning, and the first thing that always is the sign is the sideburns.
yeah.
They get really long.
Yes.
And so there's that weird transition of like your hair sweeps back, but then you got this little long hair sticks down, and then the beard.
Yeah.
And I finally found the right guard, I think, to make it look nice and blended right in there.
There you go. It's an
God,
art.
I have so much gray hair now. I am not even, like, it's just exponential. Pretty soon I'm just going to be white everywhere.
You're going to start
Which I don't
dyeing your
hate.
hair?
Hard no.
No?
No, I'm
Good.
fully on board
You're
with
gonna
it now.
Just embrace it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dudes that dye their hair. No shade either way. It's a
Rudy
personal choice.
Giuliani, just whatever brand he's using, don't buy that kind.
But I wouldn't. I'm not going to.
I'm not trying to do that.
I already got some. I have gray and red like in my eyebrows already, and like some
Yeah.
gray on the sides of my head. It's
Yep.
what it is,
I mean, if it helps me not get carded a little bit more, that's nice. I'll take
Rarely
that.
do I get carded places.
Oh yeah.
Even just the
I do it
mustache,
all the time.
like put it on a whole nother level of like. I didn't really before, but yeah, once I had a mustache, it just doesn't. Unless it's a place like at the weed store, at the rec store, they card you every time, you
Got
know.
to. Yeah.
But yeah, no gas stations, none of that shit. It's just like, yeah, here you go, man.
there you go.
It's nice. It's comfortable.
What does that say about me? Am I a baby face?
I don't know, you know.
Well, with the mask on,
Exactly.
you can't see the beard.
Yeah,
Wow.
the bars is an easier sell with the mustache, but yeah, at a gas station, they'll generally.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I do still have young eyes for sure. And like,
Oh yes.
yeah. So
Yeah. You're gonna have young eyes till the day you die.
have this fucking huge zit. That's like not. It started yesterday, and I was just praying that it would be done before the show today.
That's so funny. You're not the only person to have a special zit problem this week.
It's horrible.
Because I feel lucky, man. Because it doesn't really happen to me very often anymore.
Yeah.
But 4 or 5 years ago, all the time, there'd be like one every 2 weeks that you're like, motherfucker. What are
And
you
that's
doing?
why I'm like, bro, I'm 26. Like, at what point, does this finally start to peter out? Like, when is this done? Like, fuck, bro. But I take I take like maca root and stuff like that, so the extra testosterone, like that will definitely make you like.
You got tea and maca root?
Yeah. Well, it just increases your testosterone production. So just the increased testosterone will do it. When I started working out with John, I started getting like back knee and stuff like that just from working out and from. Taking the maca root and shit. Well, it's M-A, maybe it has M-A-K-A. Maybe,
We're
I
just
don't
gonna search.
yeah. There it is,
M-A-C-A.
M-A-C-A, yeah.
Maca root.
Yeah.
300 count for
The one I-
$19.95
Yeah, the
on
one I
Amazon.
take has like a purple lid on it. We get it on Amazon too. But yeah, it just promotes,
the building of testosterone. Is it the
exactly.
Wild Harvest?
No, it's not that one. It's that one.
The Now.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
like it.
Yeah, 500 milligrams. Yeah, so it.
Just think about this for a second. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. These are all different companies. 12, 13, 14, 15 different companies alone make a maca root supplement.
Yeah.
And that's just not even going down. So many supplement companies these days.
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah. So, and I started taking that when we were trying to have a kid. That's
Oh,
when
yeah,
I
yeah,
started
yeah.
taking that, and I've just continued to take it ever since then.
Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
It
Put that-
definitely helps with like that and the turmeric and stuff. I feel definitely
yeah.
helps with like recovery. If you take like some maca root, it definitely helps with the recovery. When we were lifting fucking big weight, I would take 2 or 3 maca root like the next day, just because it just helps. Helps you just get back quicker,
Yeah, that's good.
when you lift up fucking 400 pounds, you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
gotta figure something
Body
out.
needs to recover here.
Jordan's grandma, when we had after this, we'll move on to the show. Last summer when we had Jake out at the house to like look at doing a cement project out there, we toyed around the idea like Jake and I could do it, or they could have the company do it, and blah blah blah. And Jordan's was like, no, like I don't want you out here, breaking up cement, like bending over and like all this, during the sun. Like, grandma, like I'm 25 years old. Like I think that
If I don't do it now, I'm not gonna be
yeah,
able to do it
not
later.
only is Jake older than me, but like I think that I can handle it. I was like, it was the week after I had just like did that PR of like 385 deadlift with John. I was like, last week I deadlifted 385 pounds. She said, and I watched how you walked the day afterwards. I deadlifted 385 pounds, and of course I'm gonna walk shitty the next day. So yeah, my leg fucking hurts. Like I deadlifted over 400 pounds. Like yes, of course I'm gonna walk weird the next day. Like yeah.
Oh my!
She's a funny lady.
God, that's hilarious.
Jordan's grandma is a very funny lady. I love Nancy.
Oh yeah, never-ending stories coming from that. Never-ending stories, and they're all good stories.
Yeah.
So where do we want to start
this week,
today?
Let's talk about Dante Wright real quick.
Okay. Yep.
Because there started to be some comparisons drawn between that and the George Floyd killing last year, partially because they happened in the same area, partially because Dante Wright died while Derek Chauvin is on trial.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of these comparisons drawn. So the kind of basic facts of the case, there's as in it's DAU. Yeah, DUA. There you go. So this case, as with many, there was a lot of disinformation thrown out there, especially in the beginning hours of the case.
Yeah.
This is just
if you haven't learned to not tweet after a fucking shooting
yeah.
for at least 24 hours, I don't know. I don't think anybody can help you anymore.
This is obvious and goes without saying, but I am going to do it anyway. Colin and I, obviously, Salt of the Streets does not condone the actions of the police officers. This is in no way in defense of them or in support of their actions.
I'm about to tear them up, so you'll find
Now,
out.
yes, so there at first was reports that Dante Wright was pulled over because of an air freshener in his rearview mirror. It appears now he was pulled over because the registration was not valid on his vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
When he was pulled over, it was found that he had a warrant, I believe, for a firearms charge.
Yeah, it was like it was after a party. He stayed over at this person's house, and in the morning he got up and pulled a gun on the host and told her to give him his money. She didn't, and he took off. Aggravated assault charge, I think that's what the warrant was.
So, this happened. The police officer is one of them, a woman I do not remember her name, Kim Potter.
Kim Potter.
A 26-year veteran of the police force. So beginning to struggle with Dante Wright. He tries to get in the car, and Kim Potter they played the body cam footage like very shortly after it happened. The police department came out just
very quickly.
They said in an effort to just try and be as transparent as possible. You can hear Kim Potter say taser, taser, taser. She then she draws her firearm, says taser, 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 and then discharges one bullet from her firearm. Dante Wright gets back in the car, drives several blocks, and then dies. So that's obviously been extremely controversial. Obviously, right? I have heard some horrific takes from individuals and also from ABC people that are, saying that it was on purpose and that, there's no way that it was an accident. So let's start there, right?
Yep.
Because after it happened, the police chief of it's Boston City or Boston Center
Boston
Police,
Center.
Boston Center, Brooklyn Center.
Center, there we go.
Sorry,
Minnesota.
Yeah, okay.
What's going on in Minnesota?
Fuck anybody who names your city for another state or city. Like, you're an asshole. Okay. Anyway, so the shooting happens. There's the press conference. The police chief shows the video, then says that Dante Wright died because of an accidental discharge from Kim Potter's firearm. So that was like the first thing that I heard of this, was that they say that he died from an accidental discharge. Excuse me.
Oh my God, you're not wrong, by the way. City of Brooklyn Center. Oh, contrary to popular belief, it's not named after the city, but it is.
It's the same name.
The Railway Village of Brooklyn, Michigan.
It's the same name, and that's really my point.
Oh my God, these people.
Come up with a new name.
Come on,
just
pioneers.
come up with a new name. There's
right?
no Oklahoma City. Like, that's dumb. There's all this stupid. It's stupid.
It's Oklahoma City in Oklahoma.
Or Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Kansas City, Kansas.
All this shit. It's
What's
stupid.
going on?
It's stupid.
Anyways.
So,
sorry.
Anyway.
Kim Potter.
Yes. So Kim Potter shoots Dante Wright. He dies. The police chief says that Kim Potter accidentally discharged her firearm. That was the first thing that we heard.
Yep.
So that's, for me, this is where this starts and stops, right? For me personally. And this is not on a racial level. There's not anything else. For me, and as we said in the pre-show, in the tail end of the pre-show, in 99% of cases, an accidental discharge does not exist. It is a negligent discharge. If you are following through with the 4 basic principles of safe firearms handling, if you are doing all of these things, then no one should die. No one should get hurt. That's exactly why they're designed that way. That's why they're as simple as they are, because they are easy for someone as young as fucking 6 years old to learn and be able to operate clearly, right? So this said, obviously I don't believe that. I tweeted immediately, accidental discharge doesn't exist. It's a negligent discharge. You were negligent with your firearm. You were negligent with the safe handling of your firearm, and somebody just died. Right? So that's where it starts and stops for me. You negligently took someone's life. That's manslaughter. In one of these degrees, that's manslaughter.
Second-degree manslaughter.
There were immediate calls, for murder charges for all of these things. You run into this issue, the same that we're running into with Derek Chauvin. Murder, while it sounds great, right? Legally, murder is different than manslaughter, and that's why they are separate charges. If you're going to try to charge them with murder, you're talking about implying intent to somebody's actions, and you have to be able to prove that intent for them to be found guilty of murder. And if you can't prove that this person maliciously took someone's life or intended to take that person's life, it's not murder. You know what I'm saying? And that's in a very basic sense. I'm not a lawyer. These are very basic terms. It also varies slightly state to state. It's different, right? These are the basic ideas behind murder and manslaughter, the basic ideas behind the difference between the two. So she was obviously charged with manslaughter like immediately afterwards. She resigned from the police force just 2 days afterwards. I think she was put on administrative leave and then resigned and then charged with manslaughter.
And she has since been arrested.
Yes.
And I think she's had her first court date.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's a rather open and shut case, to be perfectly honest, in this particular case.
Yes, this has happened before. Ben Shapiro brought up a case from a couple of years ago in which that police officer was found guilty of second-degree manslaughter because you fucking killed somebody. That's what you did. You took somebody's life, whether you meant to or not. You shot somebody. Right? So as this happened, I'm then talking to Jordan, right, of just like the takes on it and, negligent discharge, accidental discharge, all this stuff. And I said, so not only do I not buy this, right, I said, because that's bullshit, it was negligent. I said, this also says to me that you are not training in your belt anywhere near as often as you should.
Especially,
right?
26-year veteran.
26 years on the force. So it's not, she's training somebody else. It's not like the training officer accidentally pulled his gun and shot somebody. The veteran officer is the one that discharged her firearm negligently, right? So it also bothers me, as in pretty much all of these cases, it was blatantly obvious the severe lack of training that is happening here.
Yes.
It should be absolute base instinct for you to know exactly where to go for whatever you're going for. If it's your fucking job to do that every day, that should be first instinct. That's first instinct, dog. Like, I just don't, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. And if you had the type of training that, say, somebody like Jocko is talking about trying to implement into police forces, where, like, what was the ratio? It was like 20% of your week should be spent in training or something like that. It's like, 100%. If you are trained to operate within purely stressful environments and you have the ability to apply lethal force in a multitude of ways, you should be training 2 out of 5 days a week. Like, you should spend 2 days in training, 3 days out in the field or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what the ratio is, but obviously the training that they're receiving now is 100% insufficient.
Well, and even outside of that, there's training that you can do that other police officers do. You can find videos. If you look up Milspec Mojo on Instagram, he's a police officer in the Seattle area that's like an insanely good shooter, and he has posted videos and stuff of him like getting ready in the morning, and so he's putting on his duty belt and stuff, and he's dry firing. Like, he's drawing from his holster, his duty holster, and he's dry firing. Like, he's doing all of this shit. There's no reason as a police officer you're not taking time out of your day. Wear your belt for 10 extra minutes when you get home, or 10 extra minutes before you leave to go to work. Do some fucking dry fire. Dry pull everything. Draw everything. Figure out how to do all of these things. Why are you not running through reloads? You can find thousands of videos and pictures of people just like myself online practicing in their full kit every single day in the extremely minuscule chance that the government decides to crack down and send the armed forces in and take everybody's shit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
and they have a profession where they're the opportunity that might arise where they would have to do that to reach for their weapon is going to be exponentially greater than ours. And if we are doing more training than them, that's a serious problem. Serious problem.
I dry fire at least once a week, which is nowhere near as it should be. You know what I'm saying?
I am loving this guy's Instagram, by the way.
No Spec Mojo's great.
That looks dope.
No Spec Mojo is awesome. I'm a big fan. So
he's a Seattle cop?
Yeah, around Seattle. I don't think
Somewhere
that he says exactly what his department is.
Probably a good call.
Yes. But yeah, he's a police officer in the Seattle area. So I just don't. Like I said, I dry fire at least once a week. I carry a pistol for personal defense on a daily basis. That's not my job. It's something I do to protect myself. So the likelihood that a police officer is to discharge their firearm is exponentially higher than the likelihood that I'm going to discharge my firearm. Yep. Why am I doing more dry fire than a police officer? For what reason? Why?
It was always the same thing I had a problem with in the Coast Guard. When you only have a range date once a year.
Right.
And that's just to requalify. There's something wrong with that altogether because, going once a year to a range to make sure you can still shoot straight does not display proficiency in weapons handling.
No.
Not even slightly. I mean, it just shows that you know how it still works, which is terrifying when you think about it. But,
yeah.
Because there's. Did you have anything else to really add right away?
No.
I want to just throw a take on there.
Yep.
Because I watched the video multiple times.
Yeah.
Just
it's been shown all over the place.
Yeah.
This one's very short.
This one is very
it's
short.
Like easy to spread.
Yes. And so, first of all, the main problem I had at the beginning, right, is not only does she draw her weapon while her partner is in her line of fire, but then muzzles him multiple times.
Yeah.
It is a fluke that she shot the perp in this case instead of her partner.
Right.
How that happened, I don't know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, it illustrates right there that you got a 26-year-old veteran on the force that should not be there.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. None of that should have happened because she shouldn't have been there. There was problems with the placement of the perp and where they were right next to their driver's side door when they should have relocated and moved them.
Side door, yeah.
And who knows? I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details of how department
cops.
Policy works and all this, but you want to talk about common sense solutions?
Yeah.
There's one. But, again, there's only so much you can do about this. And then when the police chief had come out and made the statement about it and used the term accidental discharge, I about lost my shit. And thankfully, he resigned as well.
Yeah.
The same day, I believe, that Kim Potter resigned.
I can't believe that he would say that. I cannot believe that he would say that.
And I'm good because you obviously don't belong in that job.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand how a firearm works.
Right.
An accidental discharge is it most commonly happens in machine guns in the military, and not so much anymore because we have better technology. But when you'd have a hot barrel.
Yeah.
Right.
Rounds cook off.
They would cook off and boom. So you have an accidental discharge, which doesn't involve someone pulling the trigger.
Right.
Right. Something mechanically fails, and a round is discharged through the weapon. Sometimes it's a firing pin failure, and sometimes it's a heat thing or whatever. But
yeah,
you're talking we use 99%. It's probably 99.99999,
right.
all the way down there.
Right. One of the basic tenets there, like we talked about, there were 4 basic rules of safe firearm handling, and one of them is make sure that the firearm is always pointed in a safe direction. So that's when Colin is talking about muzzling people, right? He's saying that this is for anybody who's not into firearms. Also clear, just so everybody knows, that's you're pointing the muzzle of the gun at somebody. She was muzzling her partner. She had her firearm in front of her, and then he's passing in front of her, and she's fucking pointing the gun at him, which is extremely dangerous, especially because you know that she has her finger on the trigger.
Yep.
You know that she's got her finger on the trigger, which is, again, questionable in and of itself. That's, but it.
What got me even more right is after this happened, because the situation is rather cut and dry. She's going to jail. Period.
Oh fuck
There's
yeah.
no way she can get out of that.
Oh fuck yeah, bud.
Negligent up the yin yang. It's basically, like I said before, open and shut case on this case. And the civil side might be different because the family and all this is going to be entitled to compensations of some kind.
Oh fuck yeah.
And I don't know how it works with the city of Brooklyn Center or whatever it is, or because we saw the Minneapolis paying out the George Floyd family and stuff before the trial started, all that. But there will be a civil case at some point, but she'll probably be in jail during those proceedings.
Yeah.
What was the point I was going to make? Crap, I lost it. Bad policing, training, muzzling.
It's okay. I'll go here, and there you go.
Got it. After this all happened, all the articles started to pour out, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Asking the question, how could someone mistake a taser for a pistol?
Yeah.
And then they try to break down all the different shapes and sizes and weight differences and blah, blah, blah. And, well, tasers look too much like guns. And I'm going, okay, you guys are having the wrong conversation. This is a ill-informed, dangerous conversation that is not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
Anyone tasers, depending on what type of taser it is, should look relatively similar to a
going to be the most
pistol,
effective,
right? Because that is
platform.
it's the most ergonomical design to use that tool effectively,
and for people to learn on it who are already using firearms.
Yeah,
it's easier
because it's the same kind of point and click interface, if you will, right?
Similar manual of arms, if you will.
Yes, 100%. The nomenclature is going to be very, very similar, but that just shows to me the ignorance behind these people that are writing these stories. Is anyone with two eyes can tell you what the difference is between a taser and a pistol. Any quote-unquote trained police officer knows instinctually should know instinctually where their various weapons are, where their various tools are in their tool belt.
Right.
In this case, we're probably in a very literal term.
Well, especially because I believe I'm going to say the vast majority of police departments, it is like policy for you to have your taser on your opposite hip, your non-dominant hip, and your pistol on your dominant hip. Like, that's the standard setup for a police duty belt
Would
for
make
those
sense.
two things,
And it's either that or, I've heard of situations where, and I think these are, private folks that might carry around one or the other, but you'll have one, your pistol high, and then the other one's more along your thigh.
Exactly.
So it involves a reach down or, whatever it is. But
it's a different physical motion, so you don't mistake the two.
But it literally doesn't matter.
Right.
Because as someone that is carrying those specific weapons, don't care where you put them.
Yeah.
You need to know where they are. And this was it's a tragic case. Somebody that died that didn't have to die, shouldn't have died, especially by the hands of the state. For negligence, which we see just so much more of these days. But it's not a gun conversation. It's not a police racism situation. It's like all these different situations thrown together with a lot of things that people aren't contributing to the problem. And it's the same type of shit that we're dealing with on every one of these officer-involved shootings.
Yeah.
The officer that killed that 16-year-old kid with the airsoft gun.
Yeah.
Didn't see that one floating around for obvious reasons because he's a little white kid, but he had an airsoft gun and, he went to go, put his hands up or whatever, and the guy thought he had a gun and killed him. Like, that's wrong too. Like, all of these things are wrong. We saw the most recent one, which I haven't dived into lately, was the 13-year-old kid.
In Chicago.
Yeah. I watched the video of that as much as you can anyways because they cut out a portion of it, but, saw that going around yesterday, and that was... God, and then we got the FedEx shooting,
and I think that the point of this, right, is one of the things that frustrated me the most. It's like you said, the coverage from most mainstream media, right?
It's irresponsible at best.
That this is the easiest sell possible for an example of poor police training.
Yep.
This is the easiest, the most cut and dry example as it could be, and you absolutely ruin that conversation from people. You exclude people from that conversation that would be on your side when you begin to try and make this about race. On the 14th, right, ABC Start Here, in the description for their podcast, they were talking about this. They literally said that Kim Potter accidentally shot Dante Wright. Literally put it in quotations. They put the word accidentally in quotations. So what you're saying as ABC News, you're implying that she did it on purpose. Yep. She purposefully shot this kid. That's what you're saying. As a news agency, as fucking ABC, you're saying that she accidentally shot Dante Wright. Beautiful. That definitely helps, right? It definitely contributes to this getting better. Because how many people of a libertarian, anarchist, fuck the state mindset do you have on board with, oh, the cops are negligent? No shit. Fuck the cops, done with them. And how many of them do you immediately exclude by making this about race?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, they did it because he's black.
Yep.
And they're like, no, they did it because they're cops and they're fucking stupid and they shouldn't have these jobs.
Yes.
Right? It's so
the point being is that it pulls away from the substantive conversation that that is well beyond needing to have happened, right?
And
we need to talk about these things and find solutions, and just blaming them on the ghosts of racism is not going to
you know what I'm saying? Driving while black, like these are the things that are put out there. And again, in no way does an expired registration or even a firearms charge say that you should be killed by the police. In no way does that justify these things.
Yep.
But it also doesn't say that he was pulled over because he was black and he was shot because he was black. That's not what happened. That isn't objectively, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Like that's at this point in time, that is not an accurate representation of the facts of the case as we understand it.
This particular case especially.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so to bring it to that absolutely takes away from the progress that could be made with this very instance of police brutality and police homicide.
Did you get a look at Kim Potter's partner?
He's black, right?
Yes.
So
like instantly,
yeah,
you should be able to, anybody with two eyes can say that's probably not the case, right? But it's not going to stop these people from running with the narrative and pulling away from the true conversation. Because the really hard fact about this is when you think about all the problems that we've had over the last couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years, just stemming back to whenever you want to put a date on it, the problems with police and the defunding of police, the calls for defunding police and abolishing police and all that. In all actuality, and I don't want to say this as a blanket statement, but we'll just, in general, in all actuality, you should probably be calling to give the police departments substantially more money.
Yeah.
So that they can actually afford to say hire more police officers to offset the other officers that would be normally walking the beat, which are now spending 2 days in the classroom and on the mats grappling and doing firearms training and all these crazy drills, situational awareness drills, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You need more. But at the same time, you might also... Oh, look at that. Jordan says, your guys' production has gotten so quality. Love the screen. Nice.
It's excellent.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The point being, I think we should also take a look at, we've talked about the militarization of police departments.
Yeah.
Right? How much of that money could have been used in a better way?
Yeah.
Instead of buying, armored APCs and decommissioned military gear and all this stuff, if they were to bankroll that into more officers and more training, good training, that would be working towards a solution. But at this point, I don't hear anybody talking about it. I just hear money, training, which is not wrong, but Larry the Tax Guy.
Shout out, Larry. We love you.
We do.
Yeah, so another hit on ABC real quick. On the 15th, the day after they said that she accidentally shot Dante Wright, they were breaking this down more, and so I want to explore something with you, and then I want to just punch ABC one more time.
Let me get my exploration hat.
They're then breaking down, what happened in the video and everything, and they're talking about the part where Kim Potter says, oh shit, I shot him.
Yeah.
Right? So they said, and then she says, oh shit, I shot him, as if she were surprised. I'm sorry. It seemed like she was pretty fucking surprised to me. Again, not an accident, negligence.
Yep.
Obviously surprised by her own negligence. Obviously surprised by her own actions. Right? Again, just trying to continue to push that wheel of this being on purpose, which not only does it not help with making this situation on a police level better, it immediately and directly feeds into the chaos, the protests that spin into riots, the looting that happened, all this shit. It immediately directly feeds right into that.
Oh, yeah.
The very day that this happened,
Feed
like I
the
said, there are
beast.
people calling for murder charges. There are people saying, oh, she did it on purpose. This is, this is the state. This is the police officers. They hate black people. They hate all this shit.
Jother, another example of our country's systemic racism
Just
at work.
One more.
One
right?
more. Add it to the list. as
All
they
this
say.
does, and I'm not here to fucking,
We're not
sit on a soapbox about like riots and protests and blah blah blah. I don't care if you protest. I don't care what the fuck you have to say. When you start stealing other people's shit, you're not protesting anymore. You're rioting. You're looting shit. That's what you're doing. That's not subjective. That's not.
Yep.
I don't like this cause. I don't care. I don't care why you're out. That's not my thing. If
Like
you're
when the-
breaking into stores and
Yep.
stealing people's shit, you're looting. That's what you're doing.
Yep.
That is it.
That is
Cut and
riotous
dry.
behavior.
That is riotous behavior. Again, do I really care that you're doing it? No. But let's fucking call it what it is. Let's
Yes.
call a spade if we're going to have an honest conversation about what's happening here,
'Cause it
right?
comes down to fundamental truth.
Did the Little Caesars do this? Did the Little Caesars that was broken into and looted in Brooklyn City or in Brooklyn Center, did that play a hand in this? Is this that's helping you get your reparations
Yep.
by stealing shit from a fucking Little Caesars? That's it, right? I can't. And like I said, I don't
Little Caesars is a capitalist institution, which by nature
right.
of being
Right.
capitalist is a result of blah blah blah, intersectional wokeism.
I don't care. I'm not personally upset that you're looting a Little Caesars. I don't give a shit. It does not. I don't care.
The former owner might have something to say about that,
Certainly they do.
but he's dead already.
But it doesn't help your cause.
Nope.
To have anybody stealing shit, whether they're people that are directly associated with you or not,
Mm-hmm.
people that were there with you, then start stealing shit, certainly doesn't help your cause, right?
Nope.
And it doesn't help your cause at all to not be honest about it and be like, fuck those people that are stealing shit. That's not why we're here. This is what we're doing.
Yep.
If you're just saying that's not what happened, that's a great way to progress an honest conversation, to just completely deny and try and gaslight people that are seeing video evidence of what happened the night before.
Yep.
That's a great way.
The second most aggrieved party to this,
nonsense.
because obviously the first most aggrieved party is Dwayne Wright, who had his life taken away
Absolutely.
from him, right? The second most aggrieved party was his mom when she came out, and on television said, stop this, don't violently, react to this, quit looting, quit rioting. This is not going to help bring my son back. All it does is besmirch, blah blah blah. It's bad. And you
then
got
Anthony-
that direct. His mother coming out and saying, please don't do this. It always falls on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Always falls on deaf ears. And she has the most right of somebody to be the most pissed off at the state. And mind you, they're so lost in sorrow and grief at that point. I don't know how they can even function. These people, they can get on the camera like the day after, and there's a media storm and all that, and they can actually, when you think about what happened, they can actually get through like a semi-coherent statement
That's
on
insane.
camera. Is just how does a person do that?
I thought
that's
about-
wild to me.
Last week, and I'm not
Heartbreaking.
comparing these conversations. If anything, I'm contrasting them, right?
Yes.
When we went to the waterfront last week and we had Dax running around, Jordan and I were like positing the idea of not like, wait, what if he got stolen, but like, we're like, oh, have you ever been with him and like for a split second, like you can't find him, like you lose sight of him. And we're talking about how scary that is,
Instant panic
and,
attack.
and I haven't. And so I was trying to think of it and I was like, no, like I don't even know what I would do. Like I got such a nihilistic mind that I immediately would be like, he's fucking dead. Someone stole him and he's dead. Like it's fucking done, And so I can't imagine
Such a parent.
that I would be in a place to have a coherent conversation after my son's life was actually taken from. No.
Yeah.
So the strength of any of these parents to be able to say anything to anybody, let alone call for actual justice and nonviolence, is more strength than I think I could probably muster at this point in time. So,
it boggles my mind because the media are such vultures about it.
it's horrible.
They're right. They've been camping outside her
Oh,
house,
yeah.
waiting for her to walk out.
Oh, yeah.
It's so disgusting to watch. But then you see that and you're like, God, the strength of that person just to be able to come out and get through that moment is
Yes.
insane.
So this is what I want to explore with you.
Yes.
Right? On the 15th in ABC, because this happened in Brooklyn Center, which is it's in Minneapolis, or it's in Minnesota, which is near Minneapolis. Like I believe
Yeah, I'm
that
curious. Let's
one of
pull
the
up a
I
map
believe
for
one
the
of the
people
things
here.
that came out was that one of Dante Wright's teachers was actually George Floyd's girlfriend at one point in time.
Or something like that, yeah.
So there's connection, just like, and that's not to say these two people are like, oh, they're connected, like it's a fucking, but that
conspiracy!
they're so close that, you know what I'm saying, that there is able to be
There we go.
an overlap of social circles.
So, suburb of Minneapolis for sure. It's right on the outskirts.
Exactly. So
I love being able to do that. I feel like Tim Pool.
ABC called the Dante Wright and George Floyd, they call them twin killings, right? Partially because it sounds really good because of the Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Oh my God.
Right. Okay. So partially that's why they did it. I
What
see that part.
terrible executive came up with that?
Total piece of shit. But
Yeah.
this is why I want to explore this with you, right? Because at first it's like, that's fucking preposterous, right? Fucking preposterous.
Yes.
Thought about that most of the day that day because it was so ludicrous to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I felt slightly differently about it, right?
Okay.
The one way in which I'm not going to say the one way, but the way that I can see how these could be, you could start to call them twin killings, or how they could be similar, right? Is that for me personally, they boil down to police negligence.
Yes.
Right? And so I can understand that to a certain point. I also want to take this opportunity to remind everybody to give us a like on this video, share this video with everybody that you know so they can be here, join us live in this conversation. If you're listening to this afterwards, give us a like, a comment, again, share it so that everyone knows that we're here. If you're listening to this as a podcast form, give us a rating and a review, share with your friends. Again, if you take a screenshot of the review and send it to us, we will give you, I think it's like $5 off a t-shirt or something like that. Or whatever it says there, it's all there.
We'll
Give
hook
us
you up.
Yeah, something. If you like these takes that we're giving out here, you can find these videos and all these things, our personal takes, on our personal social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. You can find all of this on saltofthestreets.com, along with our Salt of the Streets Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our Facebook at Salt of the Streets, fuck Facebook. And I believe that's it. At the end of every episode, there is a closing line. If you can tell me what source that closing line came from, I will send you a free t-shirt signed by both of us here and our wives, or whatever you want. We'll put paw prints on it, whatever you want. Whatever you want. Tell me where the closing line came from. The t-shirt's yours in whatever fashion you want it. With that, twin killings, right?
Yes.
So, police negligence, right? The Derek Chauvin trial is going on. A lot of information coming out. A lot of information about the amount of substances in George Floyd's system. The insane amount of fentanyl. All these things, right? For me personally, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a cop. I'm not anything. We talked about this a little bit, maybe like a month ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we haven't really touched on the trial, because to really be in touch with the trial, you got to be watching it every single day.
I'm not watching it. We would have to
We
be
got
doing
jobs,
a podcast
bro.
just on that.
Yes.
If that's what we were going to do. And so we're not able to cover other topics and cover the trial in the way that it needs to be covered. And so that's just...
We're doing our due diligence by not covering it.
We're not... Yeah, exactly. We don't want to cover it in a minimalistic fashion because it's such an immense thing. There are many other places you can go to find better coverage of the trial. But we have seen toxicity reports, the insane amount of fentanyl, like 3 times or whatever that it takes to kill a normal person. Personally, I posit, I don't give a shit about that because he was alive at the time. He had that much drugs in his system. He's alive at the time. There seems to be reports that he took some pills right before, like maybe tried to take some pills while he was in the police car. Yeah. And so I can see
they found
a
half-crushed speedball in the police cruiser 6 to 7 months after the situation had come out. It's
how the fuck does that even happen? So neither here nor there, right? For me personally, it boils down to police negligence. I don't know whether or not George Floyd would have died if he had not had someone's knee on his neck. I personally feel because of the drugs in his system, the knee on his neck inflamed the already existing conditions there that led to his death. I don't think that one may have happened without the other. I think they absolutely played a role, but that it is, for me personally, entirely possible that without the negligent police actions of Derek Chauvin, George Floyd may be alive, from my personal opinion. So that's kind of where I want to explore this, right? Okay. To the extent that these are twin killings, right? That for me, the one thing that I could give was the negligence side. That these are both killings of people, senseless killings of people because of police negligence. So where do you sit with this idea of twin killings in comparison between Dante Wright and George Floyd?
Because I think we've more or less established at this point that on a a shot for shot, a frame for frame take. These things are apples and oranges, right?
Right.
So you have to pull back to the 50,000 level view, the 10,000 level view, and I think police negligence is probably the first correlation that you would come back to where it makes sense for it to relate to each other. Because other than that, you got to go back further to say, okay, well, these are killings sponsored by the state. But other than that, I don't know how much finer you can get other than police negligence.
Yeah.
I really don't, because of all the different factors, like in the Derek Chauvin case, you're talking like if things didn't escalate at the point, if they didn't take him out of the car, if they would have left him in the car and drove off, he could have stood a much more substantial chance of being alive. If they would have recognized that this person is probably in the process of ODing and just went with paramedics and stay where you're at and don't take an authoritative arresting stance on that one.
Yeah.
The circumstances might have been different there. I mean,
there are likely
there's
many
a lot
things
of different
that
things
could have saved George Floyd's life.
Yes.
And we're not going to, place blame on one place or the other. Like I said, I think it's very much an overlapping thing, but it's not.
But yeah, no, I think as far as the determining the correlation between the two, the tightest correlation you can find, it probably starts at negligence with the state at that point.
Yeah.
Their officers. I think that's a good take on it because the Kim Potter case, negligent homicide, 100%.
Yeah.
Derek Chauvin case, we may or may not get that determination. Did you see how close on Thursday? How close we got to a mistrial? Did you hear about that at all?
No.
Oh my God, so this is just going to be anecdotal because I think I'm like, as far as our exploration goes into that topic, I'm right there with you. I think that's the closest you can get is negligence.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's all that I had.
Yeah.
So.
And this thing that happened on Thursday, it was the defense has been pleading their case for a portion of this week after the prosecution had rested their case. And there was a last-minute piece of evidence that the prosecution wanted to bring into the case. And the judge basically said, no, you had all this time to do all this stuff. The defense hasn't had time to look at it and come up with arguments and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But their last material witness that was supposed to come in had knowledge of this particular piece of evidence. And in this case, we're talking about the blood, what do they call it? The gas blood panel of George Floyd at the time, to try to say that because where he was put at was so close to the exhaust of the car, that maybe he also had some carbon monoxide poisoning that contributed to his death.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting, and one begs the question, why didn't anybody come up with this idea beforehand? But but anyways, what had happened was
Sorry, that's not
there was
funny.
a bunch of like little sidebars and stuff like this when it all happened. If you really want to know the nitty gritty to all this stuff, you need to search out Legal Insurrection is a group that has been following this thing. I don't know who it all makes up of, but they're all legal minds that have been essentially delivering a play-by-play action of everything that's happened in the trial. And so when they talk about the sidebar they take, and the judge talking to the prosecutor and the defense and the witness saying, this is not something that we can bring into this trial at this point. If I even hint that your witness is going to go there, I will tell you right now, I'm going to declare a mistrial. Right? Okay, cool. Got it, understood. Witness goes up and proceeds to do exactly the thing that they talked about not to do. And they had to pause. They took a recess.
And the judge is like, what the shit?
It was bad. So they paused. They took a recess. They had some conversations. And then after they came back, they essentially, because the defense objected, because this, I think, was on cross-examination of the witness. So the prosecutor is getting a chance to cross-examine. And basically it came down to, okay, you need to rephrase your answer. You need to rephrase the question. You need to rephrase the answer. Go. And so at that point, they turned it around, and instead of talking about the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning, they talked about a person's blood results on that particular test, noting the amount of oxygen that was in the blood, because carbon dioxide or monoxide displaces oxygen. And so if George Floyd had an oxygen level in his blood of 98%, I think, as we all know from COVID and checking our blood oxygen levels and stuff like that, that's pretty good.
Right.
So you can obviously rule out at that point carbon monoxide poisoning. But we were this close to a mistrial, and he even hit the thing that was specifically said not to say, and they backtrack on it right before they broke for the long weekend.
That would have been really bad.
And yeah,
That would have been really, really bad. If the judge would have called a mistrial, it would have been really, really bad.
Yeah, we'd be seeing a whole different level of violence right now.
The jury selection itself took like 10 days.
Yes.
Like it took a long time.
Long time.
Which is not like, that's not unheard of, but that's still a long time.
Especially for a high-level case.
Yeah, it's not unheard of, but it's still a long time for a jury selection. That's
not
good.
yeah, that was really close.
Yeah, that's really not good.
And but yeah, as of right now, just a quick update on where the Chauvin trial sits. They are on break for the long weekend, and they are going to be coming back on Monday to do closing statements, and then the jury will be sequestered for deliberation. So we may have an answer as close to next week. But basically, I've been peripherally following this thing just through, because Tim Pool on the IRL podcast, and even in his regular main Timcast, has been more or less reporting on it just about every day, kind of some new updates and stuff. That's the depth of my following on it. But we will see what happens. I have a feeling that no matter which way it goes, violence will ensue.
Not good. Not good.
Yeah, it's not good at all. It's not good at all. But yeah, a lot of police negligence at this point. I think all of this stuff, if you can remove the critical theory bullshit out of it, and everybody can take a step back, I think everyone with great assurance can say that we have some kind of fundamental problem in our police force and how we do policing. How we fix that? I mean, I think me and you have thoughts on training and stuff like this, which involves money. But the problem is nobody's actually having that conversation. It's like a light switch on or off conversation at this point. Rashida Tlaib came out after, I think it was what was the guy's name? The 13-year-old kid. I think it was after that she came out and was like, we need to abolish all policing. I was like, whoa, that's even Bernie Sanders came out and was like, no, that's not quite the answer. But that's where we're getting, man. We're getting more and more to these days. It's a zero-sum politics game. Our way or the highway.
Yeah.
It's
that's
bad.
a big conversation. I just don't see how that's the answer.
It's definitely
I'm not even, you know me. I'm not a big.
I don't like the authority.
I'm not a big cop guy. I
don't like the authority when they have weapons and licenses to kill.
Yeah, it's no good.
That needs to be fixed, 100%. We're an enlightened society for the most part. I think we could figure it out if we really wanted to. I think we've just proven to ourselves we don't want to, because for whatever reason.
Whatever you guys think about this, let us know. Obviously, reach out to us on here in the comments. Like the video. Reach out to us personally. Yeah, whatever you want.
Comment on this video.
Definitely.
If you're watching this thing, post the live stream, because we do the live stream so that people can come hang out. But it's also a beautiful Sunday, and we're getting into summer. So I'm not going to begrudge you for not hanging inside on a Saturday afternoon while we do this thing.
Yes.
But if you're listening to this and you're watching it, get in the comments, leave the ratings and the reviews, share it with all your friends. That's what we need to do. That's all we're asking, really. Just a little click, done. That's all we want, baby. Hook us up. Plus, if we got enough people to do that and we were able to actually start making a living doing this, we could do this every day for you guys. We could be live streaming the Chauvin trial and running commentary over top of it. If that's what you want in the future, all we need is your help to get us there. So anyways, no more cop talk.
Nope, that's it.
But let's talk about guns now.
Deal.
Executive order time.
Yes. Do you have what day it was that he did the executive orders? It was like Wednesday, I think.
Memorandum to stand for refugees. Boom. I got 3 things from here. So before we dive into it, right, the executive orders, as far as I can find, from the White House site, which is supposed to archive all the executive orders, which it does some of them, I still have just the quote-unquote fact sheet.
Oh,
they
haven't actually put out the actual executive orders. That's hilarious.
That I don't, unless I'm not finding them, which I feel like I'm pretty good at finding legislation and decrees and whatnot. But if this is what they're calling an executive order at this point, I'm not comfortable with that, because obviously the fact sheet is something that is tertiary to the official executive order, which I can't get the text of, and I'm not a big fan of that. But they do spell it out. It was just like the infrastructure bill. Because there is no actual infrastructure bill yet, because the Congress has got to build it. Thank God the White House isn't developing their own legislation just yet. give them time.
So what we're gonna do is we'll run through and essentially what we have is 5 executive orders and one staff announcement.
Okay.
And so we'll go ahead and we'll run through these, and we'll talk about them as we go through.
Let me read the topics in the fact sheet, and
Yeah.
I'm curious how they stack up to what you have there, right?
Yeah, because I just have kind of the basic, like, what they pertain to.
Okay, so the first one, the Justice Department, so this was done on April 7th, 2021.
Yes.
And the first main one here, the 6 initial actions. The Justice Department within 30 days will issue a proposed rule to help stop the proliferation of quote-unquote ghost guns. Next one being the Justice Department within 60 days will issue a proposed rule to make clear when a device marketed as a stabilizing brace effectively turns a pistol into a short-barreled rifle subject to the requirements of the National Firearms Act. The Justice Department within 60 days will publish model red flag legislation for states. I can't wait to talk about that one. The administration is investing in evidence-based community violence interventions, and then they break down a couple little, here's $5 billion for this, and U.S. State Department's going to do this. Next one, the Justice Department will issue an annual report on firearms trafficking. And lastly, the president will nominate David Chipman to serve as the director of the ATF. So there's our Waco guy.
Yes.
Our Waco guy is now in charge of the ATF, which seems great.
Okay, so we'll just start there real quick because that's, I think, the easiest one to
Just knock off.
For anybody who doesn't know what Waco is, it would be hard to imagine. Netflix made an amazing series that I don't think is actually available anymore.
Interesting.
But Netflix itself made a series about Waco.
It was called Waco.
It was called Waco. That was an excellent explanation of what happened there. The very, very basics of the situation. The Branch Davidians were a religious extremist cult that occupied a portion of Texas. They had a compound in Texas that was called Mount Carmel, and they lived there. David Koresh. All I could think was Miscavige. I'm like, that's the Scientology guy. Yeah. David Koresh was leader of the Branch Davidians. There are allegations that he was a pedophile and he was taking people's wives, and there was like all this shit, right? They were stockpiling guns. They were preparing for the end of days. They were singing rock music. They were doing all kinds of weird shit in Mount Carmel, right? And it ends up the ATF is busting them for firearms trafficking. They think they're doing all kinds of shady shit, so they start monitoring them. They start spying on them. They tip them off because they're so goddamn obvious about the way that they go about it.
Yeah.
So the Branch Davidians know there ends up being an armed standoff for like 57 days, I think, in with that.
1993?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That ends with the destruction of the Mount Carmel compound and the death of some 76 men, women, and children. Very few people escaped to tell the tale. They used tear gas. They almost definitely lit the building on fire. They almost definitely fired the first shot.
Almost definitely.
The ATF murdered people that day. David Chipman was there on the scene. He was one of the attorneys, I believe. Yeah. And then a few years ago, he was doing an AMA and Ask Me Anything on Reddit, in which he lied and said that the Branch Davidians fired 50 caliber sniper rifles at a helicopter and took it down. There is no evidence that a helicopter was ever shot down by the Branch Davidians, nor is there evidence that they even had 50 caliber sniper rifles. So there's that. This is the man that has now been tasked to lead the ATF. He also, he worked for the Giffords Institute for a while. He's worked for, I think he's been, an anti-gun lobbyist for 20 years now. He's
been involved in quote unquote non-profit anti-gun industry since his time at the ATF.
Gabby Giffords, this happened like when I was a kid, so I don't blame people for not knowing this. Gabby Giffords was a congresswoman that was shot while doing a press event at a supermarket. One of her aides was killed. Yep. She was severely harmed. She, then there's the Giffords Institute, I believe that it's called, that they do all of this research and lobbying for.
Her husband was an astronaut.
There you go.
Right?
I think so.
I'm fairly sure.
It's an anti-gun lobby. excuse me, I have a page on my phone that we're going to go over of some of the facts,
Yeah, Mark
quote
Kelly.
unquote facts, that the Giffords Institute is using to lobby people, and we are going to explain exactly why they are wrong.
I love it.
So David Chipman is a murderer. He, at the very least, is complicit in, thank you, is complicit in manslaughter and the killing of 70 plus people out at the Mount Carmel compound, and has absolutely no place serving in the federal government, and even less place telling people what they should and should not do with their Second Amendment rights. I am deeply disturbed by the nomination of David Chipman as ATF director, and this will do absolutely nothing to calm the waves between the Second Amendment community and pretty much everybody else. So good luck on cutting down on extremism if you're going to put fucking David Chipman as the ATF director.
I did not realize there is a independence class littoral combat
fucking
ship from the U.S. Navy called the USS Gabrielle Giffords.
Fucking gross. Okay.
Wow.
I don't even. I can't. Okay.
Interesting.
So let's
Yep.
start here. So the first one I have is to treat ghost guns or 80% kits as firearms. Right.
Yeah.
So ghost guns, which is funny because to me a ghost gun is not like an 80% kit. Like to me a ghost gun is a 3D printed gun. Like that's what I think of. Right.
That's what it is, realistically.
So I was surprised to hear that that's what they were saying. There are, as we've discussed in the past, I believe I even discussed it on the 1639 live stream that I did, there are absolutely AR-15 lower receivers, as we talked about, for this portion here that the handle is on, that the trigger is in. This is the lower receiver of the AR-15. There are 80% milled out lower receivers that you can purchase, and there are jigs and stuff that you can buy, and you can mill them out, and then you can build a gun with that. So it is true that to get them, you don't have to do a background check to get the 80% lower receiver. You can have it sent to your house. You can do all those things. It doesn't matter. Everything else you can buy online, but the idea that it would be in no way tied to you, I think, is extremely false because you have to purchase all of these things. So unless you were able to, which is very difficult, unless you were able to black market source all of the components for this firearm, there is very little way to completely construct an AR-15 in which there is no record of you owning it at all. At the very least, you're going to have to buy a barrel, a handguard, a kit to like a parts kit to go in the lower receiver, upper parts. Like you're going to have to buy all these things from somewhere.
Because unless you have essentially a professional metal fabrication shop in your garage, you're not going to be able to create the, because when you're talking about a barrel and a firing, the chamber and all that, you can't do that.
You can't make a barrel and shit at your house.
No.
Not one that's gonna work well.
Yeah.
Unless
you have a gunsmithing shop in your garage, which is, I know a couple people that do, but they're also FFLs. Right. And
we'll
that's a very specific type of person that wants to get into that particular industry. This isn't something everybody's gonna have in their garage or can have by going to Home Depot and buying a drill press.
And the idea, and you can do it with similar equipment, but it's not going to look very good. It's very difficult. It's not a simple process. Let me just small thought experiment, right? For everything that we've just discussed here, for everybody listening, right? There's a lot that goes into, even if you're going to buy an 80% AR-15 lower and you're going to build it all yourself. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It takes time and money, if you're going to buy even cheap parts to build an AR-15, you're going to spend $400 at least. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? At the very least, if you're on eBay and you're really scalping for shit, if you're only buying things, you're buying at least $400 to build a budget AR-15.
I feel like I can cover up all the important numbers on this one, but this is a standard lower receiver that you can get, right? But that is that's the piece that is integral to building a gun, right? And without that, and that is registered.
Right, that one is
when you buy it.
And the idea that somebody would go through the work to construct an AR-15 to use for criminal purposes, it has happened, certainly. But the amount of work that you would have to do just doesn't lend itself to like everyday criminal activity. Like
ain't
if
gonna
you're
be
talking
cheap.
about,
That's an
what I'm saying.
investment.
It's as far as time, as far as money, like that doesn't lend itself to everyday criminal activity. Certainly for larger events, terrorism events, mass shootings, things like that. These are things in which those could be used, but there is no evidence to tie 80% guns or ghost guns to mass shootings, to AR-15 killings, to anything like that. So this on a purely logical basis, this doesn't translate to lowering gun deaths on a yearly level. Like this doesn't go to that, and that's supposed to be the whole point of all of this. And Joe Biden starts by, in his press conference, like, none of these things that I'm going to talk about infringe on the Second Amendment at all. The argument that it is it's nonsense. Frankly, it's bullshit. Because that's ridiculous.
I think the way they frame this fact sheet, as they're calling it, I think it speaks to what you're talking about. So the Biden-Harris administration announces. Here, I'll go ahead and show this real quick. Announces initial actions to address the gun violence public health epidemic,
right? Which
I think is a framing device that speaks for itself.
And the second, so that's 80%. So there's anything we didn't cover. Any question like that, I'm more than happy to answer them. I also, let me say this, right? On the 8th was the day after they announced all of these things. Mm-hmm. Or maybe the day that the actual press conference happened. The fact sheet came out the day before, I think. Yeah. So that day, Jen Psaki has asked about, some of these things that happened, about like gun manufacturer liability. Like, why didn't you, announce anything on that? And like, oh, well, we're calling for legislation, but we're not helping craft it. We're not talking about it at all. And she said, like, we don't craft legislation. Like, we don't do that,
Yeah.
Didn't you just release a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan that you said you would like to be crafted to legislation and then passed for you to sign? Are you not crafting model red flag legislation for other states to use in their own laws? Is that not what you're doing? But you don't have any way to craft legislation at all,
But
right?
it's the Justice Department.
Right.
That's not the White House.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Oh, wait. Yes, it is. It's a branch of government that is strictly run and operated underneath the auspices of the executive branch, which is the White House.
So then they're asked, well, like, why the delay? There's no delay. Legislative branch just needs to introduce the legislation, and then we can sign it. That's all.
That's all.
There's no delay on our part. We're just waiting to sign the bills that we vowed we would introduce within 100 days of coming into office, right?
TikTok, by the way.
Yeah.
It's coming up quick.
And then while she's talking about David Chipman, there's literally, she's listing off his accomplishments.
Oh,
he worked here, Givers Institute, all these things. Not one fucking mention of Waco. Not one mention that he was even there.
A screaming omission.
Not one. So fucking weird, right? But he's so proud. Such a good career that we should be proud of and promote and tell everyone about. Let's talk about Waco. Let's talk about the fact that you helped kill 70 plus American citizens because you didn't like the way they were acting. This is insane. The cognitive dissonance is absolutely absurd.
Yep. And I think John Podhoran's on commentary actually spoke to that a little bit, because he is an older gentleman. He brought up the fact that, like, at the end of the day, a lot of people that are so involved in politics these days and the conversations around them aren't old enough to remember Waco. And he goes, I remember, that's what everybody talked about for a decade after that, until September 11th, basically. It was Waco and the ATF's involvement and their problems with that. Ever since 9/11, everyone has dropped the conversation of what happened at Waco. I mean, it's so bad that they had to make a Netflix documentary about it, which I can't find at all on the internet anymore.
Isn't that weird?
Gone.
And I can tell you that I watched it during Corona. I certainly, within the last 2 years, I've watched this documentary. Or it's not a documentary. It's
a miniseries.
It's a docudrama.
Docudrama.
Yeah.
So it's a fictional representation of true events.
Yes. Yes.
And I might have found that it is now available on Amazon Prime.
There it is.
But it looks
Prime
like
Video.
It's Prime Video. You actually have to buy it now.
Oh, well, of course you do.
Damn. Give it another year. It might be on their Prime. Is that who that's the dude.
Yes.
I watched him in Fahrenheit 451 recently.
He's like the only person that's trying to make sense of this. Like, he's the guy that's like, let's not murder all of these people. Like, let's try and not murder them. 51 day standoff. I believe that it was 76 people killed.
Waco. I want to see that actor's name because
Michael
I
something.
loved him in Fahrenheit 451, the adaptation of. Let's see.
Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon.
That's
Yeah,
what it is.
that dude he is a great actor. I want to see him in everything from now on.
He was in a movie
Called Shape of Water.
Take
Shelter.
Yeah, where he's a crazy person.
Oh.
That was pretty good.
He's got the look to pull the crazy thing off.
He was
I'll
good.
say that much.
Yeah, or like people think he's a crazy person. Very good. Very, very good. So
2011.
the next one that we have here, the next executive
He builds
order.
a bomb shelter. Let's see.
Yeah. Yes. For something that like nobody believes is going to happen. Orders the ATF to better define the difference between an AR pistol and a short-barreled rifle. So
That would be the conversation about
the
that
pistol
portion there,
braces. Yeah. So let's discuss this briefly because that's very simple. The way the ATF has fucked people around about pistols and short-barreled rifles is ridiculous.
Yes.
We talked about the Honey Badger a couple of months ago
Yep.
about them changing the classification of what was once a pistol into an SBR overnight, effectively turning thousands of law-abiding gun owners into felons.
if not tens of thousands.
As it sits now, the current guidance for a pistol versus a short-barreled rifle, right? An AR rifle is, again, God, I hate showing guns on the channel because it just increases the likelihood that we'll get banned. An AR-15
Shadow ban will do for
rifle
now.
has a stock on it, which is generally adjustable and has a longer buffer tube in the back and has a barrel that is 16 inches or over, right? An AR pistol is an AR-15 that has a rifle or that has a barrel of less than 16 inches but has a pistol brace on the back, right? Which is kind of like a stock, but it's different because it's made for one hand.
Yes, because you're not allowed. The minute you shoulder that
It's a
pistol
rifle.
brace, it becomes a rifle.
And a short-barreled rifle is an AR-15 that has a barrel with less than 16 inches and a stock on the back as opposed to a pistol brace, right? These may seem like very finite and nuanced differences, and
Yeah.
they are, and they're also very arbitrary and stupid.
If you were to ask yourself, how would that change the end result of a mass shooting, you would be right to question that because it would not change anything.
So, it benefits. Okay. It does and does not benefit modern day gun owners to have a more defined idea of what a short-barreled rifle is and what a pistol is. Because also, like, if you have a pistol, like an AR pistol, then you can't put a vertical foregrip on it, and that's what this is right here. This is a vertical foregrip that it's obviously vertical straight out instead of at some type of an angle. On an AR pistol, you have to have an angled foregrip, some type of something like that.
Like when you take a look at a standard long rifle, right?
Yeah.
There is no pistol grip.
Right.
You know, there's, it almost kind of looks like it. There is no vertical stabilizing grip.
Nothing.
There's none of that. So if you
Right.
were somehow to construct an AR-15 that looked similar to that, we'd be having a different conversation.
And the
wouldn't we?
purpose of that is because it's an AR pistol, it's meant to be shot with one hand. So the idea that you would need a vertical foregrip
Yeah.
is
We can also make this sound, which is super dope.
that's
Oh,
nice.
I love the bolt action.
So those are the technical differences basically between the two. There's all kinds of, there's also like a 36-inch total length. There's all kind of 26-inch total length. There's a lot of weird qualifiers that go into this. And that's the one way that it would benefit modern gun owners, just to have a better idea of what these things are. However, it is an immense burden on modern gun owners to increase or lengthen or expand the definition of a short-barreled rifle, because a short-barreled rifle is subject to what is called a tax stamp, in which you have to pay $200. You have to wait for processing and all this stuff. It doesn't change anything, right? In this discussion, or the announcement of the executive order on SBRs, right, on short-barreled rifles, there is a comment about short-barreled rifle. There's a couple of things they say, right? One of them is that it makes it more concealable, generally true, right? It also says, Joe Biden also says that it makes it more stable, generally true, I guess, with a stabilizing brace. An AR-15 is a generally very stable platform. I don't know that I would argue, I wouldn't argue that firing an AR pistol with one hand is more stable than firing an AR rifle with two hands. I would not argue that, because that's fucking stupid.
Yes.
That doesn't
Not to
make any
say that
logical sense.
A shooter couldn't become proficient in
Certainly.
shooting that way.
Certainly.
Which again speaks to the ignorance in which this conversation is being had.
But it's not more stable. It is
No.
to shoot a rifle with one hand is not more stable than to shoot it with two hands.
You're going to be
It's
doing
not.
exponentially worse.
More concealable, certainly. There's like folding stocks, all kinds of stuff that you can put
Yeah.
on there. But they also talk about it making it more lethal, right? That it makes it effectively more lethal.
Effectively.
Right? Okay, so let's talk about lethality, right?
Let's do it.
This is the bullet that is fired out of an AR-15. This is the bullet that is fired out of my everyday handgun. This bullet weighs 60 grains, give or take. This one weighs 180 grains, right? This one is effectively 3 times heavier than this one. This one moves much faster because it's much lighter. This one puts a much, much bigger hole wherever it hits.
There's much more
bigger.
There's much more force behind the pistol round than the AR round.
There you correct, right? This again moves at a higher velocity because it's a .223 sized bullet. The diameter is .223. This is 10 millimeters across, right? Which is .45. It's the same thing, right? So this is almost a half-inch around. This is just under a quarter of an inch round. So this is twice the diameter of this bullet. If you get shot with this is going to fuck up a lot more than this is, right?
I just want to bring in one more aspect of this conversation real quick, because it is very important to understand. The most common rounds used in an AR-15 is that .223 round, but you can also chamber it in 5.56. You can chamber it in almost anything you want, including, put those things back up there, this bad boy, a 6.5 Creedmoor. I can build an AR rifle chambered to this round, which means I can shoot them just as much as that one or that one. It just depends on how you build the platform that it's going to be operating within.
This bullet will kill a bear that Colin has in his hand.
Yes.
This one will kill a bear in a pinch. This one will not kill a bear by itself. A lot of these.
Maybe like 100 of them.
A lot of these would kill a bear. This is carried as a sidearm commonly by people in big bear country and big predator country. That you bought specifically because it would kill a bear, so you could hunt a bear. Right?
With the right shot placement, I could take down a moose with this.
The idea that this is in any way more lethal because of the length of the barrel or the equipment that is on it, what's called furniture, if you're building one, is ludicrous, right? We can then talk about the technical aspect of it, that if you're talking about an AR-15 with a 16-inch barrel, which is the standard size rifle barrel, right? You have an effective range of like... I will get all kinds of shit. I'm going to say like 600 yards. You can get an effective shot out to 600 yards with a 16-inch AR-15 with a good scope, with a good all this stuff, right? You could get a good hit.
Because round
right
choice at that point
with a
really matters.
5.56,
With a 5.56,
you could get up to 500 rounds, you'll be just fine.
I wouldn't
500 yards,
yeah,
right?
I probably wouldn't want to do it with a .223.
No.
Because it's a smaller round.
No, but I'm still like an M4.
Yeah.
You know, an M4 standard military rifle is made to reach out to that distance if you need to, but that's not its prime operating territory. But it will go out to that far if you need it.
Yeah.
It is ballistically stable out to about that far. If you cut barrel length off of that, if you cut 6 inches off of that, 10.5 is a very common barrel length for a short-barreled rifle or a pistol. Your effective range is almost cut in half.
Yep.
So again, the argument that it's more lethal because it's shorter is not only not technically sound, it's logically not sound.
Which speaks to the nature of the conversation being had by the uninitiated.
And also, it underlines, I think, not only the importance that you follow us on our personal social media, right? Where you can find me at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Don on Instagram. You can find Colin at Big Bird Offie on both those things. You can find all this on our website, saltofthestreets.com. We have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our YouTube at Salt of the Streets. If you're watching us right now, we have our Facebook, fuck Facebook at Salt of the Streets. If you're watching us on YouTube, please leave us a comment, a like, share this with everyone you know so they can see this. If you're watching it afterwards, same thing, comment, like. If you're listening to this on a podcast, leave us a rating and a review. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will send you a t-shirt for $5 off. If you can find out what the closing line of this podcast is, where it's from, I will send you a free t-shirt. Signed in whatever fashion that you want. Go get your haircut by Paul. Go to Location Skate Shop. My wife and son are headed down there right now. Okay. Lethality. Oh, it also underlines the importance of having an honest conversation about this, right? If you have listened to this podcast from the beginning, you know exactly how long my history is with firearms. If I'm able to take 10 minutes and completely fucking dismantle everything that you laid out as nation-changing, world-changing legislation, we have a major problem here. We've got a major problem here.
Yeah.
Because I've been into guns for about 5 minutes, and I'm able to tear it apart. We've got a problem here. So, again, my deepest core, I feel that all gun laws are infringements on the Second Amendment.
Yep.
And my more realistic everyday life, I am willing to have discussions about what you would call common sense gun control and things that you think might help. This is not it. And I'm not willing to have those conversations if you can't even be honest or informed about which we're talking about. Not going to do it. If you can't be honest or informed about the topic in which we are discussing, abridging my Second Amendment rights and the Second Amendment rights of every citizen of this country, we need to have a very honest, very candid, very, very informed conversation about what that looks like. And if that's not how this is happening, this is not how the conversation is going to happen.
And preferably, and this is something I've come to recently, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. If we were to have these conversations as far as if they're under the auspices of writing up a constitutional amendment, in which that way at least they would be speaking to the true nature of what they're trying to do, which is alter our Second Amendment rights, which is something that the government in black and white in the Constitution says they are not supposed to do. I mean, either way, we could still have a conversation about having an amendment to the Constitution as far as, our 2A stuff goes, but nobody's willing to go there because they know that it's blatantly unconstitutional to begin with.
Well, and it would also expose the deep-seated deceit of their initial premise.
Yeah, we're not coming after your 2A.
Not even
we're
that.
Not coming after your 2A, but you are.
In this very announcement, Joe Biden says, from the very beginning, you couldn't own whatever firearm you wanted. Yep. Okay, there are actual legitimate United States court cases you can draw back to that rule that people can own cannons. Okay, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, at the time that people owned ships, when they were maritime traders, you could literally own, not even just that, you could own a cannon at your house. There were requirements at a certain time from like 14 to 48 of certain arms that you had to have on hand at all times because you were effectively part of the local militia. So the idea that the government was limiting in which you could have as far as firearms go is not only ludicrous, it is factually and historically incorrect. It's inaccurate. That is a lie. It's not true.
And when he said during that same conference there, when he was talking about all this, when he said, there's always been people in the United States that have not been allowed to own guns.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Slaves and criminals.
Yes.
And we don't have slaves anymore, thank God, Joe Biden. And yes, criminals, we have effective legislation in play that say that if you commit a felony, you cannot own a firearm. Period. Full stop.
That exists right now.
That exists. And so when Joe Biden gets up there and he starts talking about how not everybody, we've always had cases at which some people couldn't own firearms. Yes, during slavery. That was about it. Other than that, it was if you were in trouble with the law, which is the same kind of situation we have now. It's mind-boggling.
The next executive order that was announced is, like we talked about, the
red flag
model legislation for red flag laws. There are, I think Jen Psaki said, either 13 or 17 states that already have red flag laws on the books in some form. I believe, are we one of these states that has red flag laws? Have we not got here yet?
I think we did finally get here.
I think that we did. A red flag law in its most basic sense is a law that would allow police officers, individuals, and doctors. We are a red flag state.
All right, let's see. We're going to pull this up.
Of course we are.
Here. And now we're going to see if we can guess the state. Okay. Of course, Google's not helping out here. What states do we have here? We got Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming. No.
Colorado, Wyoming's more north.
Arizona.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Is that Arizona right there?
We're terrible.
This is really bad. I got to go. Change the camera angle, quick.
Ah!
Get rid of it. So anyways, there are multiple states that do have red flags on the books, and we are indeed one of them.
So a red flag law is a law that allows police officers, doctors, and also private citizens to petition to have another private citizen's firearms taken away for a period of time because of some form of emotional distress or concern about their emotional state, or say a person who may be a present danger to others or themselves.
And that's according to Wikipedia. But
Steven Crowder did Change My Mind this week about red flag laws that
I haven't watched it yet.
Would suggest everybody
Yeah,
go and watch.
Looks good.
It's interesting.
Common sense gun.
Yeah, it's not exactly correct. There are definitely a thing or two that I should have written down so I could talk about it. There's definitely at least one thing that he says in there that's not factually accurate.
Common sense gun control is nonsense. That's his latest change.
Yeah, that's the Change My Mind. If you haven't watched any Change My Minds, I would highly recommend it, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on. They're very interesting. You could learn a lot from them regardless of who you are.
Because in your mind, you could watch that. If you vehemently did with Steven Crowder, you could watch that and just through the TV screen, scream at him and try to change his mind. And he may tackle whatever it is that's in your mind that is, he may end up changing your mind.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched it. I started watching it last night right before I passed out in this chair.
We've talked about red flag laws before. One of the big concerns about red flag laws is that there are already laws on the books. When you fill out, and this is one of the things that Crowder talks about in this Change of Mind, when you fill out a background check to purchase a firearm, you have to answer a question of whether or not you've been adjudicated mentally unfit to own a firearm. Like that's something
that's one of the
already a
questions.
question. It's already a question you have to answer. It's already a hurdle you have to overcome. There are already processes in place in which you feel that somebody may be a danger or a threat to themselves that you can report them and their firearms can be taken away prior to red flag laws. These things existed. These processes existed. People, I think just kind of in general, are hesitant to report their friends or family or people they know to the police to have some of their rights taken away. Yep. It's just not something people to do very often. Yeah. There's also an enormous stigma around mental health and people getting help and things like this, around people denying things.
Which is sad because mental health problems are at an all-time high today.
It's horrible. And
all-time high.
That's one of the big concerns from, or at least as stated by more of like the pro-gun and pro-2A community, is that because of the rampant reign that anxiety and depression and different small-scale, generally emotional disorders, how frequent they are. Hey, you're running to the chair, homeboy.
He's blind. He does that.
Because of the frequency at which they occur, there are like many people that could have their firearms stripped from them just for simply emotional. I have battled with depression my entire life. Entire life. From before I bought firearms to afterwards. Do I think that my struggles with depression and anxiety should hinder me from owning a firearm because I have bad days? No, I don't think that at all. Yeah. I'm very aware of my mindset. I'm very aware of my current emotional state. I'm very aware of when I'm having a good day, when I'm having a bad day, when my thought processes are healthy, when they're not healthy. Like, part of that is because I went to therapy for many years to help me learn these things so I can be more aware. I do a lot of work on myself personally, right? This is because, for me, so many of the people in my family have mental health issues. There isn't a stigma around it. That doesn't exist for me. It would be more of a bad thing for me to not have received help to deal with my problems than for me to have gone and done it. You know? So for me, I didn't have that issue. You know what I'm saying? I don't have that stigma that exists. But it's very concerning for people who don't sit in that same mindset that their rights are going to be taken away from them because they're having a bad day, because they have a tendency to have bad days. Like that's very concerning.
Oh yeah.
I don't I want to be very clear about this, that I am not at all minimizing the severity at times of my depression. But even at my worst days,
thought never crossed your mind.
Still carried my firearm.
Yeah.
Still. There have been days, at risk of whatever, that I've chosen to maybe not put a round in the chamber. Maybe I just put the magazine in that day. I don't load in the chamber. Still went to work. Still did all these things. Still was vehemently aware of where I was at emotionally, where I was at mentally. I don't have any qualms about asking you or someone else I know, will you hold on to this for a little while? I don't want to have this in my house right now. I don't feel like I don't have the concern of being judged from you or from Jake or from Trenton or anybody for me to say that. You know, like, hey, just hold us for just 2 weeks. Check in with me in 2 weeks.
I'll be like, word.
We'll just see where we're at. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I know if that relationship, if that dynamic doesn't exist with people, then that can't happen. And that is not common, you know? So
that speaks to, our, like you said before, our current stigma around mental health and our complete inability to try to deal with it in an open manner.
Yeah.
Because there is still, for whatever reason, some kind of stigma behind it. And I pulled up the statute as far as the RCW 7.94 is the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, in which they detail that our red flag laws from 2017.
So the idea behind this, I can't even say I'm not opposed to, because I don't like the idea. There have already cases of these laws being abused already. There is Steven Crowder, as he does, picked one thing and harped on this one case over and over and over again.
As he does.
Somebody leaving bad reviews for their doctor and their doctor turning them in as a result of that, and then them having their firearms taken from them as a complete bullshit thing.
Because the problem is when you actually codify it into law, there are people that will find ways to make whatever situation it is fit a similar letter of the law so that law enforcement gets involved. Because realistically, I mean, shit, we've talked about this before, right? I have a feeling in some capacity. Laws exist for a particular reason, right? And it's to make sure that society is all playing by the same rules on the greater good, right? And when society decides to abdicate one of their responsibilities, generally as a law is put into place so that society doesn't have to uphold that responsibility anymore. And when it comes to mental health, I think that is probably the biggest taboo that we have in our current society, which by all measures, looking at every single factor around every complicated mental health situation, should be handled at its lowest level within the family and the friends group and the individual. That's where it should be handled. But the minute society is refusing to uphold that responsibility, they try to make the government pass a law so that they don't have to worry about it anymore. And it doesn't solve anything because of the way our law enforcement and justice system works. You potentially make those people some form of a criminal. And that puts even more pressure on somebody not to come out if they have depression and anxiety and so on and so forth. Because it gets, if you think that the stigma behind an open conversation about mental health will get better with red flag laws, you are kidding yourself.
You're going to scare people, man.
You're going to scare people because now all of a sudden if you have that conversation, you might be opening yourself up to some kind of criminal liability.
Even with what I just said here.
Yes.
Somebody could very likely petition the Kitsap County Sheriffs to have my firearms taken from me because I think I'm going to kill myself.
Yep.
I am, because of the career path that we're on, I am willing to have that discussion, you know what I'm saying, to put that out there. But there are people who aren't in positions like this, like I said, live with that stigma that I didn't grow up with, that are not going to be willing to share that information.
And that is a fucking shame.
And the idea that someone would be further deterred from seeking help because they're afraid they're going to have their guns taken from them, I think is a tragedy. And
you dealt with much suicidality in your life? I know you've had a particular case in your family and whatnot, but like, did you have much more exposure to that type of situation growing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think in today's age, it could probably be said of most people that have some kind of at least indirect tie to that. And I think everybody can acknowledge that after something like that happens, it's like everybody looks back and, the signs, there's always signs, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes there's not, sometimes there is, but for God's sakes, man, we got to get over this societal problem we have. And the only way to do that is to be able to make it okay to openly talk about those things. I have conversations with people in my everyday life that, because of my own struggles in that same department with other people, like, we can talk about things like that.
Yeah.
And like, that helps a lot.
Right.
Just to be able to like lay it all out on the table one day and not know somebody that goes through similar situations or have gone through simulations can listen to that and understand and not judge you. It's like it's one of those things where you feel like a burden lifted off of your shoulders, all just like that, because you were able to just expel something, Get it off your chest. Have somebody listening to you intake it, understand it, and just acknowledge that, like, bro, I know exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. I feel you.
And I want to hit on your point about the abdication of responsibility. I've got three quick little things about that, right? My first point would be if there's anything in this country in which we should not go on, Mama. Go on.
The tale of doom strikes again.
We should not abdicate our responsibility.
No.
The mental health of our citizens is one of them.
Yep.
The mental health and the mental well-being of everyone around you is your responsibility as much as it's theirs. And that's not that like, oh, well, it's your job to make sure that they don't kill themselves. If you think that there's something wrong, it's your job to try and do something about it. Do I think that means that you should fucking call the police and try and turn them in? No, I don't think that's what that means. Do I think that it means you should try and talk to them, try and maybe get them to talk to somebody else, try and get them to do something? Yes, I do think that.
Yeah.
If we're talking about
It's a responsibility.
an example in which a specific group of people's mental health has been left to the state and has been absolutely destroyed, I think the veterans are an excellent example of that.
Oh, yeah.
The mental health of our veterans, specifically the veterans from the Middle East, have been
from our longest-running war.
It's been almost solely left to the government.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, do we not have a charity that's called 22 Too Many?
Yep.
22 a day veterans take their lives because their mental health is not addressed in a serious enough fashion.
Yep.
And we are now asking for the mental health of our everyday civilians to be left in the hands of the state governments. I think that is an enormous mistake. Third point that I was going to make, abdicating responsibility.
I wanted to drop a JVP rule in here that might equate to that. That rule of finding the heaviest thing you can find and carrying it.
Yeah.
That's part of that social responsibility that everybody seems so in love with abdicating these days.
Yeah.
It used to be that, like,
oh, I got it. Keep going.
You need to step up to the plate. And if you see somebody that you find struggling, if you are able to, just talk to them.
Yeah.
Talk to people. Help people out. I mean, I went through a number of suicides when I was growing up, and it was like a new thing for me because they hadn't really become that, I don't want to say popular, but common at the time. But I think I talked about my friend growing up last. It might have been during our doubleheader on Instagram. We'd go over. He was an immigrant from Japan. His family was first generation, so he was a baby when he was brought over. We'd just go up in his tree house and watch those old Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
First suicide I ever dealt with in my life was him. Nobody saw it coming, and then once you become older and stuff, you realize that there were signs all over the place. But even though sometimes there isn't, it just speaks to the fact that you really, like, these things happen every day all over the place, and so many of them just get like, well, I'm not going to worry about it.
Right.
I'm just going to keep going because I don't want to deal with that person, blah, blah, blah. You know, what if I make it worse or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just be a fucking human being. And if you see somebody that's not having a good day, maybe try to talk to them about it. It seems like the human thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
The third point that I want to make on abdicating responsibility is, if that is what we're talking about, right, this needs to be done because we've abdicated responsibility, is I can point to numerous cases over the last few years, specifically of mass shootings, in which the responsibility of taking care or addressing threats to certain individuals has been completely abdicated by the federal government. We have seen numerous mass shooters be on the list of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and nothing was done. Yep. The mass shooting was still done anyway. And then afterwards, we find out that they're on the list of the FBI. Oh, the FBI had been following this person for X amount of time.
Yep. So why wasn't there some kind of social worker called up to just go talk to somebody?
And why would we then again leave this up to the state? Like, why, if they're already showing they can't handle the most extreme of cases, the people that actually do commit mass murders, actually do mass shootings, if they can't even handle this, in what world do we expect them to be able to handle regular, everyday gun violence?
Yep.
That seems ludicrous to me. This is not a logical thought process.
We don't trust the government to build our smartphones. Why would we trust them with protecting our mental health?
This does not make sense that this would solve the problem.
Nope. Sure wouldn't, but it sounds good during a campaign, and it looks good on legislation.
During the announcement that David Chipman was going to be the new ATF director, Joe Biden also said, also, we need assault weapons ban and magazine capacity bills in this country. Okay, the federal government did a study after the assault weapons ban and found the assault weapons ban in 1984 literally had no no noticeable change on gun violence. None at all.
Big zero.
That's really weird. Maybe that's because criminals are the ones that do gun violence and not like regular law-abiding citizens. That's super weird. So, the magazine capacity bill, we've talked about that in the past. The idea that Kim Potter is gonna, well, maybe Kim Potter, but the idea that a regular everyday police officer is gonna outshoot me or somebody like Andy Sound who has a sub 2-second reload, one reload one, that's ridiculous. That's ludicrous to me.
Yep.
I think it would be great if they did, but it seems evident to me from everything that we've seen that we can't expect a standard police officer to be able to disarm somebody who is, from this same line of thinking, a very well-trained, extremist fucking terrorist that wants to destroy America. If my whole life is dedicated to destroying America through gun violence, I'm going to be really good at shooting guns.
Yes.
You're going to have to be even better than me.
Yes.
That doesn't seem like that's how this is going now. So, again, the idea that that's going to be the game changer seems awfully fucking silly to me. The idea that I should have to have 5 less opportunities to save my own life or the life of my family or my son because criminals, people who are already criminals, are going to do criminal activity, are choosing to use what are then going to be considered illegal magazines is ludicrous to me. That's ludicrous. The idea that it's done. I keep saying that. The idea of this, the idea of this, the idea of this, but it's stupid, right?
I was going to ask you, who is the current head of the Justice Department? Who's the Attorney General right
Merrick Garland.
now? What's his history on guns look like?
Mm.
I wonder what that model legislation is going to look like after his Justice Department publishes it. That'll be interesting.
Because he was the one that said that the short barrels made ARs more, the braces made ARs more lethal. Which, as we have just discussed in scientific means, because we're both scientists, is not true. Like it's
all you got to be is a legal, law-abiding gun owner
untrue.
to realize that it's factually bullshit.
The next thing that was announced was a federal study on gun trafficking, which I think is not going to turn up what they want. Not going to turn up what they want.
What was that? Old Fast and Furious? Does that sound about like what happened last time the government tried to figure out what was going on with gun trafficking?
Is that the one where the feds were trying to find out what happened with the guns, and so they sold them to the cartel, and the cartel killed U.S. law enforcement?
Yes.
Oh.
That's exactly the one. That's
Right.
exactly the one. That's what happened last time they tried to do it.
Right. That makes sense. Let's definitely do that again. Right?
Yes, why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
Eric Holder's not going to be there to take the blame, but Merrick Garland will do that. That's fine. It's no big deal.
He owes us one. We gave him a job after he couldn't go to the Supreme Court, so he already owes us one. They'll just take the hit for the team.
Yep, that'll work out real well.
After that, they said they're going to put money into community violence intervention, which of all of these things,
That's
probably the best one.
That's dope.
That's probably the best one. I told Jordan, we'll end this topic by talking about this, right? Actually, we'll run through and see if there's any more.
Because Saki's got something to say about it.
Exactly. On the 8th, she was asked about ghost guns. She had no data on hand on crime involving ghost guns.
Really?
Really weird.
Really, really strange. Maybe because the people that are producing ghost guns aren't criminals.
Maybe because it doesn't fucking happen. The idea.
Maybe.
Again, we just talked about the labor that goes into building it. Like, it's not simple. It's like certainly you could do it in one day, but you'll have to spend a few weeks getting all the parts together. At the very least, you have to have them sent to your house. You have to buy them online and have them sent to your house. If you're really trying to cut on costs, you got to buy them online. And if you don't want to cut on costs, you want to buy it in a store so you don't have any, you can buy it in cash. You're talking about even more money. Like a complete upper receiver, again.
A completed, 80.
A completed upper receiver, something that has a barrel, rails, this part right here, the upper receiver that you could attach to the lower receiver and make it effective. It's like $400 at least.
Yeah.
For good shit. Like, you can get a cheaper one off of Palmetto State, but again, then you're talking about having it sent to your house. Like, these are not, you can't use cash. You're going to have a receipt in your name. Like, there are all these things. If you're really trying to do it so that no one knows, you're talking about $500-600 on a fucking rifle that you're going to go to fucking prison for or die for afterwards.
Yep.
That doesn't
be
make
easier.
sense.
It'll be easier, quicker, and cost effective to just go to the store, do the background check, and buy it.
Yes.
So why would somebody that is a law-abiding citizen
to buy a gun off the street that was stolen, had the serial number stripped, that had any of these things, right?
Got to pay markup for that.
Less than 2 years ago,
Yes.
there was 99 guns or something like that, just under 100 guns stolen from a local gun store in Gorst, right? Within 2 weeks, 17 of those guns had been sold through Snapchat online and used in crimes. 17 of them in 2 weeks. Okay, the idea that criminals are going to a gun store to buy a gun to then do a crime is ludicrous. It's not factual. There is no factual basis in that. And we'll talk about that in these Gabby Giffords things, right?
Okay.
So we'll go through these, and then we'll go through the Gabby Gifford stats, and then we'll move on. So no data on handgun crime involving ghost guns, right? Because it really relatively doesn't exist. Certainly it does. Certainly it does. On a very rare instance, right? Then again, if you're talking about 3D print, you're talking about going through the work of like testing and making sure that it's good. You have to have like the right, like a strong enough polymer that you're making out of. Like there's
you gotta have the right 3D printer, and the $200
the right
3D
filament,
printer
the right,
on Amazon ain't gonna do the job.
No. So no data on hand on ghost gun crime. When she was asked about the gun show background check in Biden's lied because Joe Biden
the gun hole loophole
said, do you know that if you go into a store and buy a gun, you have to do a background check? If you go into a gun show, you don't have to do it.
Wrong.
Okay, so this has been talked about for fucking years, right?
Yep.
The so-called gun show loophole, that if you're at a gun show and you purchase a gun, there is no requirement in which somebody does a federal background check. So
that's a lie. That's not true.
Right. Also, to sell guns at a gun show, you have to be an FFL.
Yes.
You are a federal firearms licensor, in which it is a crime for you to sell someone a gun and not do a background check.
Yep.
Right? It's already a crime that already exists. It's already illegal for a federal firearms licensor. The only people legally authorized to sell firearms in the United States are FFLs.
Yep.
Right? It is already federally and in most states, probably all states, illegal to sell someone a firearm without doing a background check, right?
Yes,
if
and there is a particularly small group of states in which there is one particular private transfers, and that is the only case, and it's not that way in most states.
No.
It is in a few states, but at that same time, you are held criminally liable if you sell a gun to someone that is not legally allowed to have it.
Yes.
There are laws on the books that stop all of this, that protect people from all of this.
Even if you don't do the background check because you think someone is going to fail it, that's illegal.
But the
to buy a gun
fundamental
for someone else who can't get a gun is illegal. There are signs in fucking sportsmen's like that's already illegal. That already exists on the books, right?
100%.
She was then asked about, like, what about a brace buyback or confiscation? She said, I don't think that that's what we're looking at, right? I'm sure,
better
right?
not be. Yeah, sure. I'll believe that when I don't see it.
She was then asked about a deadline for Congress on guns, and she said the president isn't waiting for Congress. There's more executive orders to follow, even though, as we just talked about, these executive orders don't really do shit.
Which, thank God, because we haven't gone full dictator yet.
Yeah. This is the last stuff, and then we'll go through that.
Every president gets they get one or two steps closer to pure dictatorship, but we haven't quite crossed that line just
Gabby
yet.
Giffords talks about arms list, and I'm going to shit all over her for that.
Which is sad.
On the 16th, she was asked, why not a whole-of-government approach to guns? And she said, the president used the levers of the president to make sure that was done, and that permanent change takes Congress. Okay. Jen Psaki just admitted to everybody what apparently they don't want to say. They don't, the same thing as immigration, they don't actually have power to permanently affect any of these things.
Yep.
Ludicrous,
The executive branch has the power to execute laws that are passed through Congress.
Right.
That's how that works. It's right there in the name.
She was then asked about, like, well, what are the next steps going to be on gun control? Because if you don't, then really you're just kind of punting it to Congress. Isn't that really what's going on? This was the greatest thing. She then started talking about, well, President Biden has been working on gun legislation for years. Like, he fought the NRA twice and won.
Ooh.
And, the assault weapons ban, and he just acted with these executive orders, and now he's waiting patiently to sign the bill. Beautiful. What progress, Jen Psaki?
God,
what
she's
progress
so
on gun control, Jen Psaki?
So terrible.
Okay.
She's so terrible.
Gabby Giffords.
Gabby Giffords.
And I'm not Gabby Giffords, the Giffords Institute.
Because Gabby Giffords' story is rather tragic because
it is tragic.
Because she was shot in the head, is what happened.
Yes.
And she did
the Giffords
live and recover, but obviously there has been some rather permanent brain damage there.
Yes.
And so but the Giffords Institute or Foundation, whatever it was established after that to become a gun control lobbyist.
Joe Biden also talked about what he called the Charlotte loophole, which is in many states there are regulations that if a background check takes more than 3 days, then you can leave with the firearm afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't understand in what fucking world, for what reason, a background check needs to take more than 5 fucking minutes.
Yes.
But that's just me.
Because we live in the future.
So,
we have this beautiful thing called the internet and databases.
well, and it's like, remember, it used to be in Washington State that if you had your concealed pistol license, they could use your background check from your concealed pistol license.
Yes.
But now they don't. So even if you have one, you still have to wait the 30 days, like all this stuff.
Got to run a fresh one.
Even though every 5 years I have to go and do a new background check, I have to go and fingerprint myself again to make sure that I haven't violated the law, I still can't use my concealed pistol license.
Which kind of scares me because if you go in to get your background check and your fingerprints done and all that stuff for your concealed carry permit, if you have committed a felony between then and whenever you go in to go redo it,
and I still
if you still have it, how does that not speak to a fundamental failure in the system?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the Gaffords Law Center webpage to prevent gun violence, it says, and this is their page, on
gun
universal
is
background
like the greatest
checks.
slogan they came up with since Build Back Better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Universal background checks are essential to close deadly loopholes in our laws that allow millions of guns to end up in the hands of individuals at an elevated risk of committing violence each year. Though more than 90% of the American public supports background checks for all gun sales, a dangerous and deadly loophole in federal gun laws still exempts unlicensed sellers from having to perform any background check whatsoever before selling a firearm. Okay, so let's stop right there.
Where?
Unlicensed firearm sellers.
Yeah.
That means people who are not FFLs.
So you're talking about the personal transfers.
Right.
In the very small,
yes,
minuscule percentage that those are actually done, which in most cases is like parents passing down their guns to their children. That is the most common form of which that is done.
And we will talk about something called arms list later on, because that's okay. Yes.
So excited.
Under current law, unlicensed sellers, people who sell guns online or at gun shows or anywhere else without a federal dealer's license, can transfer firearms without having to run any background check whatsoever. Okay. First of all, the only people who can transfer the name, the title, the serial number of a firearm is somebody with an FFL, because you have to have access to the federal firearms, not registry, but license. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The background checks.
Do you know how to get into that system? Then you're not an FFL.
You have to be an FFL to access that, right? In which case, it would then be a crime for you to transfer the title without doing a background check first, right? Like, that's the thing about this, is that if you're reading this and you don't know anything, you're like, this is fucking crazy.
Yep.
But if you know even the most basic things about firearms or ownership, if you ever tried to buy a gun before, you're like, this doesn't even make any sense. Yep. Of course, an unlicensed firearm sale is not required to do a background check or transfer the title. Because you don't have a fucking license, you shouldn't be selling it anyway. You're not allowed to.
Yep.
Okay.
You're inherently a criminal already.
Yes. Because of this loophole, people who are subject to domestic violence convictions or court orders, people who have been convicted of violent crimes, and people ineligible to possess firearms for mental health reasons can easily buy guns from unlicensed sellers with no background checks in most states. Okay.
What is this?
In order to have let's just talk about Arms List real quick, because that's kind of what they keep referring to, right? Arms List is a website in which you can go and buy firearms from people who are privately selling them, right? You can buy them there. Just like when I bought my AR-15, I bought it on sportsmans.com.
Look at this long terms of use.
Yes.
So
this is armslist.com.
I am 21 years or older, yes. I understand the arms list is never involved in transactions between parties and does not certify, investigate, or in any way guarantee a legal capacity of any party to transact.
No. And so Arms List is like...
So they're a middleman.
It's Craigslist. It's Craigslist for guns, right? You can't actually buy anything here. You can find guns for sale.
Through an FFL.
Not even that. You can find them. People can list their personal firearms, right? But when they do that, in order for your name to be put on the firearm, which for you to legally possess it, it has to be in your name. For you to possess a firearm that is registered to me is a crime, right? It's a crime for you to have it, a crime for me to give it to you, right?
It's not an easy website to navigate.
So for you to legally possess it, it has to be transferred into your name, which has to be done through an FFL.
Yes.
So anybody who they advertise their guns on here, right? Say that you're going to put this AR-15 up. I want to buy it, right? That's great. Let's go. For me to transfer it to your name, we have to meet at an FFL.
Yep.
At the FFL, that's where the money changes hands. You pay the FFL to transfer the title because they've then just witnessed a crime take place because you just gave someone a gun for money and they didn't do the background check.
Not to mention there's generally a fee associated to that FFL so that he can get paid a little for running the background check.
Absolutely. So even if you use something like Arms List to list one of your firearms and you sell it, for you to then give it to that person without a background check is a crime.
So what we're talking about here is the prevention of pre-crime.
Like this,
we're trying to find pre-crime.
These things already happen, and when you dig through and you use all this like coded wordage and try and do these things, that's the only way to make this work. That's the only way to make it work out. You know, I don't. Okay.
Which again speaks to the fact that the people that are having these conversations and leading these debates have no knowledge of what they're talking about.
Okay, so let's see. When background checks are required and properly enforced, they can help keep guns out of dangerous hands. Since the federal background check requirement was adopted in 1994, over 3 million people legally prohibited from possessing guns have been stopped from purchasing a gun or denied a permit to purchase. Okay, so it works. The background check system is working. Is what
they're saying right there is our NICU, or is it, what's it called? The NICU?
Yeah, the NICS.
The NICS system works because they catch people all the time that are, or they get flagged or whatever.
More than 35% of these denials involve people convicted of felony offenses.
Yep.
They already had felonies, which disbars them from being able to own a firearm, and they were not allowed to purchase a firearm.
Yep. I know a guy who's really hesitant. He wants to go buy a shotgun for home defense, and he's really hesitant on going because 25 years ago he had a domestic abuse charge associated with him, which he fought and was supposedly expunged because it was one of those, it was an ex-girlfriend who called and blah, 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 went through the whole thing. But now he's worried about going in there because what if that somehow pops up and then he's afraid of getting hemmed up?
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. I can't even imagine that.
Right, because to try and buy a firearm when you're ineligible is also a crime. Because you're falsifying legal documents. You are falsifying federal documents.
Hunter Biden.
So weird. That's not discussed at all. Isn't that so weird?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I do just want to take this time to remind everybody that you can find more of this information on our personal social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. You can find all of this saltofthestreets.com. You can also find our personal, or that social media there, Salt of the Streets, Instagram at Salt of the Streets, Facebook at Salt of the Streets. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. Also, leave us a comment and a like. Share this with everybody you know so
really
they can
helps.
Find us. It really, really helps us.
Those likes go a long way. The comments in there, it's just a little, what's up?
Yep.
That goes a long way to getting boosted.
If you are listening to this in a podcast form, leave us a rating and a review to tell your friends about it. If you screenshot the review and send it to me, we'll give you $5 off a t-shirt. If you can tell me what the closing line of this podcast came from, we'll send you a free t-shirt with our signatures on it or whatever you want. Make sure if you're getting a haircut, you go to Swell Blended, and make sure that you go to Location Skate Shop today. They're open now. Okay. With that, this next part, right?
Hopefully I didn't just get us banned if I'm mentioning Hunter Biden's name. Background
check laws also, you got to listen like really carefully, okay? Oh, no, that's not the one. Background check laws also help prevent guns from being diverted to illegal gun market. States without universal background laws export crime guns across state lines at 30% higher rates than states that require background checks on all gun sales.
That's confusing.
Yes. Laws export crime guns across state lines. Crime guns.
Crime guns.
That means that guns used in crimes, which the vast majority of which are unlicensed, unregistered.
Mm-hmm.
Unregistered firearms. Okay, so that's what they're talking about. However, in the absence of comprehensive background check systems, people who are ineligible to possess firearms routinely exploit the massive loopholes in our laws. Around 80% of all firearms acquired for criminal purposes, this is the one. Listen really carefully, okay? Around 80% of all firearms acquired for criminal purposes are obtained through transfers from unlicensed sellers, and 96% of inmates convicted of gun offenses who were already prohibited from possessing a firearm at the time of the offense obtained their firearm from an unlicensed seller. Okay, what that says, because, again, we have just gone over numerous times how even if you are going to sell a gun, if I'm going to privately sell a gun in the vast majority of states, I have to do it at an FFL so the title can be transferred, or else I'm immediately, even if I don't think you're a criminal, even if I do think that you could pass a background check, I have still violated the law by transferring the title of my gun or by not transferring the title of my gun and giving it to you in your possession.
Yep.
Already a crime, right? Okay. 80% of all firearms acquired for criminal purposes, a crime is occurring. That person is a criminal. Are obtained through transfers from unlicensed sellers, which means that person also broke the law in the vast majority of cases. And 96% of criminals convicted of gun offenses, crimes, who were already prohibited from possessing a firearm at the time of the offense obtained their firearm from an unlicensed seller. Unlicensed seller. Okay? As we have just gone
AKA
over.
criminals?
As we have just gone over, unlicensed sellers mean people selling guns on the street. That's illegal.
Yeah.
To sell a gun on the street is already illegal. Like, this doesn't change any of those things. A background check doesn't stop me from giving you $500 and taking a gun from you and fucking killing somebody.
Yep.
That doesn't stop that. That doesn't change these things. A federal background check law does not stop me from illegally buying a gun off of the street and using it for a crime. This doesn't make any sense. On the fucking Giffords Institute, the Law Center website, it's telling you that. This doesn't make sense. This does not solve the problem. These are already crimes. These are already against the law. These will not fix the problem. The only one that might, the two that might solve this problem, a federal study on gun trafficking to find out how in the fuck all these illegal guns are going all over the place that they're going. And next, community gun violence intervention. Let's talk about this because this is what I want to say there, and this is what got me on this, right? I told Jordan the other day, we had a long conversation about this after I said it. I said, if you gave me the choice, I would, no question, take all of the mass shootings that happened in America. I would willingly take those if you could get rid of all of the gun violence, the illegal gun violence that happens in inner cities. So I would willingly take it because the amount of gun violence that happens at the hands of mass shootings compared to the amount of gun violence that happens with
in
illegal
Chicago,
guns
every day.
in inner cities it's not even comparable.
Yeah.
It is a
You want to talk about doing something for the greater good.
4%, 5%
Yep.
of the gun deaths that happen every year are because of mass shootings.
Yep.
Half of them are because of suicides. The rest of those, the other 45%, give or take, are legal gun deaths happen on the street, people defending themselves, like these things.
Yep. Which are happening.
I would willingly take the mass shootings that we have every year to get rid of the insane urban gun violence that is happening on a fucking daily basis.
Yep.
One of the things they talked about, they spit out this insane statistic of, 800 people have been killed or shot in the last whatever. Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's always that. I don't know the number but it's always put out there as like, well, so many people die of gun violence every single day.
Yeah.
And 95% of them are happening in the worst inner city shootings.
You probably didn't hear it. But between those two incidents, the two mass shootings, right? Less than a week apart, there were more than 850 additional shootings. 850 that took the lives of more than 250 people and left 500 injured. Okay, so there were two mass shootings, right? Totaling 18 people. And we're now talking about 250 people killed on a daily, on everyday crime in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
That we keep talking about how important these mass shootings are, how big of a deal these mass shootings are. They're tearing our communities apart. But you have just said that, 10%, 5% of just these that happened these 2 weeks were mass shootings. But that's the justification for all these things is mass shootings.
Yep.
That's the justification for these gun laws is mass shootings. Even though in the same breath we have just admitted that inner city gun violence, everyday gun violence is the problem.
Yes. Now, we might have brought this up in the doubleheader or even last episode. I can't remember, but the classification for what constitutes a mass shooting, right? And it's 4 or more individuals involved.
Generally
right?
speaking, yeah.
The reason they set it at that number is because of all the inner city, mostly gang-related violence, generally runs around 3 people or less, right? And so you put that cutoff there, so that way the amount of mass shootings doesn't skyrocket through the roof.
Which
So
makes sense
there's
if
a
you talk about it
classification.
honestly.
Yes, if you're talking about it honestly, it does make sense because then, okay, well, what's going on with
Helps you
those
discern
those
the
shootings that
statistics.
aren't mass shootings?
Yes.
The number skyrockets. Maybe we should be addressing that.
Yeah.
But no, they don't do that. Washington, D.C., Detroit, Chicago, quickly becoming New York City once again.
Oakland,
Oak-
New York
oh
City
my
in
God.
itself. I mean, there's
Yep.
the amount of gun violence that happens in these places. There was just a study I saw just yesterday that's like, I don't know, 80% of the gun violence in the United States happens in like fucking 50 cities.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if
not
you
much.
look at a map of the United States,
Yeah.
there are fucking whole states that have 0 murders.
Yep.
Like, that's a thing that happens. Entire
Yes,
states
it
that have
does.
0 murders.
Yep.
Why? But we're talking about across the country, this epidemic of gun violence.
Yep.
Like, this is not the case.
Because it doesn't fit the current narrative for what they want to ultimately accomplish. They don't ultimately want to rid us of gun violence, because if they did, they would have been throwing out every single politician that has run through Chicago for the last 3 decades, because all they've done is make it impossible for law-abiding citizens to get guns while the criminals just load up, because that's what they do, because they're fucking criminals. Criminals don't have a problem obtaining an illegal weapon. It's the law-abiding citizen that has a problem in those crime-ridden states and cities getting weapons. I mean, in Washington, D.C., all of the gun purchases happen through the police station. That's how that works. You have to run the whole thing. It takes forever. It's an arduous process to do. But does that stop, or does that lower the gun violence problem in New York or in Washington, D.C.? Not even a little bit.
You have somewhere between 5 and 8 million new gun owners last year.
Oh, yeah.
If guns were the problem, you would think that you would see an immense. There was an uptick in violent crime last year. There was also an immense amount of rioting and looting and protesting that happened that ended in the death of many people.
Yep.
So those two things are definitely correlated.
Oh, yeah.
Let's look at gun violence over the next couple of years, where we just, like I said, increase somewhere between 5 and 8 million brand new gun owners. Not new guns sold, brand new gun owners, right? I mean,
Yep. And I mean, there's been
if guns were the problem,
Yep.
it would be pretty obvious. There are more guns than people in the United States. There's more than 330 million guns in the United States. If that was a problem,
love it.
you would think that we would know about it.
Yes.
Instead, you have to use coded language and lie about things and change the names and be dishonest about what people really are to try and spin this to fit your narrative.
Yep. Because if you were honest about the conversation, you would be honestly speaking to the actual problem. But I don't know why we can't do that. I really don't understand why we can't do that. I can guess, and all the reasons are very, very cynical and very bigoted. And I don't think anyone's ready to face the truth behind the makeup of the majority of gun violence. And so we focus only on the extra tragic, what they call mass shootings, what we call mass shootings, like the FedEx shooting recently, the spa shooting. We've had I think in 2021, it's probably safe to say that there has been a great deal more mass shootings, as they're colloquially referred to now, than have been in the past. And I think that probably speaks more to the mental health aspect of what we have been going through for over the last year.
Yeah.
More than anything else. But it's so easy to label everything mass shooting and gun violence, right? It's so easy to just throw a general label on it and say, we need to fix this problem.
Yeah.
When in all actuality, every single issue is a very finite problem. There's probably hundreds of small problems that need to be addressed and fixed if you want to address quote unquote gun violence. If the CDC is going to, or no, that's something else. If the White House in this statement is going to refer to gun violence as a public health epidemic, you need to be addressing the actual problems, not the overarching theme, which is just gun.
We have just laid out for you exactly why these will not solve this problem.
And I think we did a damn good job, buddy, by the way.
Yet somehow this is the initial actions to address the gun violence health epidemic in this country.
Disingenuous, and all you're going to do is foment division and not fix any of the problems.
And let me pose one last logical question, and then we'll move on. Maybe we'll talk about the border.
Okay.
If I want to commit a crime, and there are more guns than people in the United States, is it not easier for me to find a like-minded individual like yourself, just for example, and say,
Yo, let me borrow this.
hey, I'll give you $600 for this right now, and to leave and go commit my crime, than to take the time to go through these steps to try and commit a crime afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm going to commit a crime, why would I go and buy a legal firearm? And that's...
Unless your end goal is, I'm not coming out of this thing. Which is what, I mean, how many of the mass
fucking
shootings do
illogical.
we see take place where somebody went out and illegally purchased a firearm for their crime? Like, it's not much. Most of the time, it's somebody came across it legally, or they stole it from their parents because they were being irresponsible.
Right. But their intent wasn't to make it out. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That wasn't their goal.
Yep.
They don't care.
They don't care. If somebody's going to go do that and not want to be searched for afterwards because you plan on coming out of it the other end alive, they're not going to go legally buy a gun. It's nonsensical. None of this stuff, all this quote-unquote common sense gun legislation, doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense to you if you have no concept of the industry in which you are trying to infringe on. If you just if you go in with assumptions only that guns are bad and guns kill people, blah, 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 this stuff does make sense to you. But then you'd think after 10 years of all these after the 90s era assault weapons ban, when that didn't change anything, and then for decades afterwards, assault weapon ban gone, you could buy assault weapons, whatever quote unquote those are. When the numbers haven't changed that much, when do you realize that you can't just fall back on your priors?
Yeah.
And expect people to fix things? But it's not about fixing things. It's about feeling good so you can maintain your power and force through your own agenda.
No. And if you don't, as a closing thought on this, if you don't know about firearms, I would behoove you, I mean, first of all, to learn about them, but if you don't want to do that, it would behoove you to listen to the people that you're calling gun nuts that are telling you why this doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Because we've, like Morgan, when I sit Morgan down and I'm like, let me tell you why this is convoluted, and not like, this is stupid, gun rights are fucking infringement. But like me telling you that this logically doesn't make sense, that this will not solve the problem, Like when I sat down with her and talked about 16 years old, she's like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, that's what I'm telling you. Like, I'm not telling you, I am, but I am telling you all gun laws are infringements. That's not my point now. My point is, this is not the answer. This will not do it.
Yep.
And that acting like it is just making you feel good, When people keep dying, you're going to feel real fucking bad about it,
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not the answer.
You won't feel bad about it because there's always another piece of legislation that could be drafted.
Yeah. And if you are a gun person and you're tired of talking to people, tell them to listen to this podcast.
Boom.
Because we will have timestamps in the description. So let's talk about some updates on the southern border.
Let's do it.
Let's just go ahead and run through these here note cards, huh?
Note cards.
So on the 5th, we have the White House press conference, and it was reported that there was 100,000 plus crossings in February, and 170 plus thousand crossings in March. And that is not those who stayed. That is those who crossed the border.
Yeah.
And so that's just to be very clear about that.
The individual interactions
Correct.
with Border Patrol.
Yeah, on the 7th, that was the day after it was announced that border wall construction was likely to continue to fill in the gaps in the southern border wall, which, remind me, Colin, was Donald Trump not talking about how he was trying to build the wall to fill in the spaces that were there where people were walking through?
Hard maybe.
Okay.
That's a definitive yes.
To which Jen Psaki said construction is paused, which to a certain extent is true. I have seen videos and pictures of construction crews at the border literally standing there fucking doing nothing because they're just showing up every day, getting paid, waiting to be told they can continue to build. Piles of fucking steel just sitting there that's already been paid for, already been everything.
It's because they're fighting it out in the courts to see if they're legally allowed to stop the construction, because this money has already been allocated and obligated.
That's what she said. We are reviewing as able the funding that is going into it. Yes. Currently, there are, like you said, there's a shitload of money already allocated, already been paid out. Companies already been paid, employees getting paid actively to build the wall. Funds that we're legally within Trump's jurisdiction to reallocate. You maybe don't like it, you don't agree with how he did it, but he did it, right? Again, I I don't love it. I'm not here to talk about whether or not I like the border wall.
Yeah.
The point is that
Not a huge fan, but I get it.
the Biden-Harris administration talked about how it was racist and xenophobic this entire time, and I'm like, oh shit, the only thing that we can do is fucking finish up the border wall. So fucking weird, right?
Interesting.
They then talked about the Central American Miners Program was being restarted, which, as we talked about before, is
It's a 10-year fix.
it's also near discernible, like almost not discernible from the Wait in Mexico policy, because it's just focused on children. Instead of being able to apply, everybody being able to apply in the country of origin, now it's just children. Now children can apply from their country of origin.
Because the minute they decided to get away with the policy, Mexico was then able at that point to essentially renegotiate a new one, and they said, we can't, we're over capacity, we can't do this, we're not going to do this, we'll take the minors at this point.
That was on the 7th, and later in that, she was asked about, she says, what are like the signs or the benchmarks for success for Vice President Harris's immigration plan?
Oh, yes.
How are we going to know whether or not
It's working.
she's successful?
Yeah.
You know, she said, we are focused on the long term. So we're not really setting out any benchmarks. Like, we don't have any indicators of what immediate success would be because she's focused on the long term. And then regarding is if Harris was really doing the border or if it was Mayorkas that was on point at the border. Because, and then she got asked about, because
Alejandro Mayorkas?
Yeah, and she was asked that because she went to, because Kamala Harris went to Chicago and like went to a bakery and was like taking pictures there. And so she was catching a bunch of shit, and Jen Psaki says she was there for COVID and she got a snack. I think that that's acceptable, you know, like went on this whole thing.
Yeah, she always gets so defensive.
Dude,
it's
like,
bad. You're a bad person for asking this completely legitimate question.
Yeah, and then they were also asked about, obviously, the continuation of the border wall and charging multi-time crossers with offenses. Actually charging people who have been found to be crossing the border more than one time. She was there for COVID and got a snack. And there is a
There for COVID and got a
dark
snack.
team in South America to try and deal with these things at the border and discuss what they're going to do. And then she was asked, you know, about, like, well, she's also going to be going to South America, you know, so the Northern Triangle isn't the border. So I wouldn't expect her trip to be to the border because her focus on the Northern Triangle and not the border.
Because they can't send her to the border because they'll have to deal with the reality at the border.
She then asked
So
the fact that
transparent.
as of 4/7, right?
10 days ago.
10 days ago, there had been no families reunified through the family reunification program.
Is this a surprise to anybody?
Not one, right? Her response, well, the Trump administration had no system, and we are currently authenticating people. There's a lot of inaccurate information they were trying to work through. I'm sorry, didn't we just see reports that they're processing people and not asking for contact information when they're there?
Yep.
That's right. Not only are they doing that, they're putting people on planes to wherever the fuck they want to go, giving them checks and cash in their hands, and not asking for contact information once they've done that.
Well, let's make sure to be truly factual here. They're
Yeah.
not putting it in their hand. They're giving a
right.
manila envelope that also says, big old sheet of paper here, please help me, I don't speak English.
Right.
Courtesy of ABC, or NBC.
But
Whoever
we
did the
just
report.
don't know why the numbers are so high or where they're going. Right?
Don't
We have no idea where all these
People are-
people are going or why we can't track them or why we're having such a hard time authenticating the information.
That same report was the same one that also said that the vast majority of these people are coming in are not being given court dates. They're not getting any contact information of where to get a hold of them afterwards, and then they're putting them on a plane or a bus and sending them on their way.
No, and the idea that the Trump administration had no system for family reunification is a lie. They
It is
were
a lie.
actively doing that. The Biden-Harris administration has referenced, I have to do it now, has referenced children being sent out of the country to be reunified with their families. They've referenced it. They've already talked about it.
Yep.
This is actively happening. That was there. You can't reunify families because you're just taking in anybody who's there, any children who are there, regardless of information, anything like that. Keep talking about, they have little pieces of paper balled up in their hair. That's what they keep coming over here. Then what's going on?
What's going on?
Then what's going on here? Like
So if they have a phone number written on their wrist or in their hand and they come up and somebody calls them, how are you going to verify that that's who they say they are?
no system.
No system.
Yeah, no system.
No system.
then she was asked about the vice president visiting the border. We're focused on solutions. Is what we're focused on. So I don't have any trips to preview of Vice President Harris at the border.
It's so terrible.
Yeah.
I want her down on the border in that facility telling me that they are meeting COVID restrictions. You know, they're following the COVID guidelines with these kids stacked up like cordwood underneath an overpass, wrapped up in space blankets.
Yeah.
I would love Kamala Harris to be there. I need to see that picture.
On the 9th, you also had Mayor Pete was in the building that
Mayor
day.
Pete!
And
Pothole extraordinaire.
she was asked regarding $60 million a week being spent by the federal government housing unaccompanied children at different HHS facilities and CBP facilities. And her response was, oh, well, the Trump administration had to ask for more money too. Do you mean the money that you just shit on them for allocating to the border wall and to the border to try and deal with this? That's what you're talking about. Right. That it was racist for him to do that. That's what you're talking about.
That's
right.
it. That makes you racist too, right? Because you are.
After that, Greg Abbott asked for one of the facilities in Texas to be closed because there were reports of sexual abuse of children. And Jen Psaki said,
not on a small scale.
We're looking into it, but we don't have any plans to close that facility at the time. Awesome.
Sweet.
But we want to treat the kids humanely, right?
Yep.
This is all about humane treatment of children.
Humane.
Right?
You guys are batting 1,000.
Let's see, on the 9th, regarding unaccompanied children, up 100% from February to March. And then asked, is there a point in which you will stop taking all kids? Her response was, it's not humane to turn them away. Instead, we'd like to keep them under overpasses with aluminum foil blankets. We'd like to put them in facilities in Texas where they're likely to be raped. We'd like to put them with people that we don't know. Maybe they'll just sit in HHS facilities for, I don't know, until we can figure it out. Until we can get there.
Yep.
We'll just keep building more facilities, just keep more open air facilities. We'll just keep bringing them in because it's not humane to turn them away. It would be fucked up to turn them away. It would be wrong.
It'd be wrong to turn them away into even a slightly less shitty situation.
She was then asked about reports of people being deported to Mexico and not to their country of origin, right? Which is, again, something they have shit on the Trump administration for just sending people back to Mexico when they're deported. Well, this happens on a case-by-case basis, so like I can't really address that. We're not really in business of talking about people's personal circumstances, in regards to their deportation and everything. So, things happen on a case-by-case basis. I can't really speak to that.
Just dodge that shit like Neo, bro.
Yep. See, on the 12th, this is the big one, right? On the 12th, she was asked about, is there some agreement that you guys had with Mexico and these Northern Triangle countries to some border security or something? Let's see. Mexico is adding 10,000 plus troops to their border, both from their military and their police forces. Guatemala is on their southern border, right? To, I believe, will you pull up a map of South America real quick? Guatemala is doubling the amount of troops that they have on their southern border, right? There are 1,500 police officers, law enforcement individuals on the southern Honduran border, plus 12 checkpoints on the way down from that.
So we got Guatemala.
Okay, so on the Mexico-Guatemala border, there is now 10,000 Mexican troops from both the military and the armed and the police that are on that southern border. On the southern border between Guatemala and Honduras, there is now 1,500 police officers that are on the border there, and they're on the way south of the Honduran border to El Salvador. There are 12 checkpoints now that immigrants can go through. And let's see, what was the point of this?
What kind of environment they're dealing with right there.
Let's see, what was the point of this? Oh, to make it harder to cross the border, to deter the journey. Let's see, when Donald Trump was, I hate that I am just keep having to defend Donald Trump.
Right? It's terrible.
When Donald Trump started the Remain in Mexico policy.
Yes.
It was
racist,
slandered as a deterrent from migrants coming to the border, right? It would be ludicrous for them to be used as a deterrent. Why would you want to deter people from coming here to try and make a better life, right? They're now openly saying this is to deter people from the border. We so badly don't want to increase security on our own border. We're going to pay other countries to do it for us. You can already, right now, look up videos of these things already happening in the past, and eventually They're just lines of the South American police officers. Eventually, the caravan, the group, just gets so big, they just force their way through the line.
Yep.
While, in the meantime, the people that are there are getting the shit beaten out of them. They're getting sprayed with water hoses, flashbangs, fucking OC spray, all this shit. Because there aren't enough people to overpower the police at the time. That's what's happening in these southern countries when we ask them to take care of our problems because we don't want to do it. I don't even want to say our problems that we have helped create.
Yes.
Right? I think it's probably a better way to say that. So instead,
Kind of like how corporations always offshore their problems.
So instead, we're going to go ahead and pay these southern countries to do it for us.
We're going to offshore it. They probably get a better rate of return on their money that way.
She was then asked, like, how is this going to be done? Like, how are we going to pay for this? Like, are we going to move people? I don't know. You're going to have to ask them. You have to ask those countries. I don't know.
I love how she has that stance.
I'm not doing that. I don't know.
On everything, it's like, well, there's another way.
Yeah,
Talk to this department, talk to this part. You're gonna have to talk to the representative of that country, because
don't know.
that's so good.
Let's see. On the 15th,
so glad you got it figured out.
She was asked again, who was the point person on South America in this order. She says, oh, well, Secretary Mayorkas is having like a big role in it, and the Special Envoy Zuniga is having a big role in it, and of course, Kamala Harris is like in it for the big picture, and she's there for the root causes and to try and talk to these countries about how they can help.
She's the executive president
that
doesn't do anything.
Order.
Yep.
In that order. Come on, dog. That's like the most Freudian slip ever. Like, Mayorkas, Zuniga, and Harris. Of course, Harris.
Of course she's there.
I almost fucking forgot to talk about Kamala Harris. Come on, dog.
Okay. I can't wait till the next press secretary. It's going to be really interesting.
The 14th. This is from Intercepted. Intercepted did an episode, and they talked about starting in February. Border Patrol has been bringing immigrants and immigrant families to the closest, quote unquote, the closest population hub instead of the biggest city. The closest town. That's where they're going, right? So this particular article, this particular segment was done about Ajo, fucking New Mexico, I think.
Because that was one of those states that we missed. That was New Mexico.
Ajo. So wherever Ajo is, I believe it's in South America, or I believe it's in New Mexico. Where there is 30 AHO, Ajo.
Arizona.
Oh, maybe AJO. That's what it is. Arizona. Okay, 3,700 people there, right? Where Border Patrol has been sending people there with the wrong paperwork or no paperwork. People have just been showing up without any reason. Families have been separated, right? Have been separated.
Nice giant mine there.
Yep, both on accident and on purpose. They're sending people. They're separating people and then sending them to different towns. So fucking, they said a grandma got sent there, completely separated from the family that she crossed the border with. They have no idea what's going on there. They have no idea what's going on, and they're being sent to these places, right?
That's so wild.
To which once they're sent there, it is then charities and nonprofit organizations that are not only paying for the COVID tests, they're paying to house people, they're paying to quarantine them, and then they're sending them on to the next place. Right?
Well, yeah, because a lot of these people, once they get to the border and get through the system, are malnourished and dehydrated.
Yeah.
A lot of them are very sick. Because
it's
a long journey, bro. It's a long journey from El Salvador all the way down here, all the way up here.
Yes.
You're not going to be in the best health.
They also said that Title 42 has been used over 500,000 times in the last year to deny people from coming into the United States. See, and this is also on the 14th. This is from the White House press briefing. Jen Psaki was asked, Kamala Harris going to Mexico City and to Guatemala, but not to the border. Mm-hmm. Her response is, she's tasked with the leaders. She's talking to the leaders, and we're focusing on solutions and opening facilities and getting kids out, which we've seen some progress on. She really fucking said that, which we've seen some progress on.
We've seen some progress on
that.
So
good. So glad that we've seen some progress. That it's up 100% from February to March. We've seen some progress. You're not going to close a facility in which children are being fucking raped by other inhabitants there. Such good progress.
So good.
Such progress. So good. It's so awesome.
I mean, it's kind of representative of the rest of the progressive points lists.
She was then asked, right, we just talked about all this stepping up border security in the Northern Triangle countries. She was then asked about cash payments to the Northern Triangle countries, right? So, they've stepped up their personnel in the Triangle borders to deter the journey and reduce the numbers getting to the border. And there have been talks about the most impactful ways to help. So we're just sending money down there so that they can figure it the fuck out, and we don't have to worry about it. We're just going to bankroll it because that's worked out so well for the United States all around the globe to just bankroll shit. That's the way. Rich Daddy is just going to bankroll it. Just don't worry about it. Big Daddy America, we'll open up. We'll fucking tap the keg one more time. Just knock another one in there. Don't worry. Another trillion to the debt. It's no big problem. China's real happy about that shit.
And this is what this is progress. That's progress, Don. That's progress.
On the 15th, Jen Psaki was then asked about reporters of migrant families self-separating, right?
Yep.
This is in reference to families coming to the border, then sending their children alone to cross the border because they know that they will be taken by Border Patrol, processed, and then sent to an HHS facility, and then sent to somewhere around the country, whether it be a charity, a family member, or whatever. If the family's lucky enough to get in, then they'll receive their kid later.
Yep.
And she says that is an unintended consequence of our choice to treat children, humanely. Yep. The border is not open. There is no plan to think the lone child strategy and treating kids humanely. There's no plan to rethink the lone child strategy or treating kids humanely when they cross the border. That's quote unquote treating kids humanely when they cross the border by putting them in a facility in Texas where they're likely to get raped. Awesome. So good. So humane. Fucking so awesome and humane.
She said it right there. Unintended consequences. The road to hell is paved by good intentions.
She's then asked the next day on the 16th. Apparently, the special envoy, I believe Zuniga, testified in front of Congress, and he said, actually, there are no agreements with the Northern Triangle countries. No written agreements with Northern Triangle countries for any of this. They're talking about the border. And Jen Psaki is like, I don't know about like that quotation. Actually, I have it right here. I can read it to you. Reads her the quote about the special envoy saying, "We do not have any written agreements." Jen Psaki says, "I actually never said that it was formal, but they have committed to border security." So I then told Jordan. Jordan was in the room.
Progress.
Jordan was in the room when she said that, and I said, "So I decided that what makes or breaks a good press secretary is their memory. So you need to remember exactly what you said." When you said it and what the fuck you meant. And Jen Psaki can do that. Like, actually 2 weeks ago, 9 days and 7 hours ago, I said this. Well, shit, fuck me, you're right. Okay. Sean Spicer couldn't do that. He's saying stupid shit, getting fucked up all the time. Sarah Sanders was great at that. She was like, that's not what I said. That's not what that person said. So,
man, I forget what it was that she fucked up on that had her replaced with McEnany.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was one thing. Went, ooh, you missed it. Now you're out. Sorry.
And the last thing I have here as far as the border from the White House press secretary is she was then asked, does President Biden not want to raise the refugee cap while the southern border crisis is going on? Like, what's going on in that shit? It's a factor, but also the processing system was trashed. Okay. And I have to pause there.
Blame Trump.
I am beyond sick of this being the caveat. Oh, well, Trump destroyed the system. He did this. The system was trashed. Okay, so even though we were actively processing refugees, albeit the lowest amount in many years, right? Albeit that was happening. Prior to COVID, we were processing refugees.
Yep.
So you're telling me, even though it was happening, you don't have any way to do it at the same level, because that's right now, it's the same level committed that it was during Trump.
Yep.
Even though that was happening, those systems still existed. You don't have any way to process those people through the same systems that already exist and are actively functioning. You're telling me when Donald Trump said, shut down the refugees because of COVID, also go in there with sledgehammers, destroy the fucking computers, destroy the manuals on how to do this, because I don't want anyone to know how to process these refugees. I want to destroy the system. It's trashed. It's done. That's what you expect us to believe? It doesn't exist anymore. No one knows how to process refugees because Donald Trump said, don't do it anymore.
Oh my God, I'm crying. It's so hilarious.
It's beyond insanity. That's the just. Also, the system was trashed.
The system was trashed.
Why not just say, we didn't know before, or we thought they were lying, but once we got in here, we realized there really is a certain cap on how many people we can effectively take care of in this country that aren't legally citizens of the country. Yep. There is a limit on what we can do as the government.
On our current, there's a limit. There's a cap on the amount of intake our current immigration and refugee system infrastructure can take.
Like, that's not racist.
No,
That's not racist to say that.
That's reasonable.
It's realistic.
And you might get some public backing by saying, "Hey, this is an antiquated system that's been around for a long time. I want to shit as bad. I want to put down the last administration as much as possible on this thing. But at the end of the day, I am realizing now that we have a crystal clear. You could even make it. You could still have it a fuck on you, Trump type of thing by saying, if we would have had a longer transition period, if we wouldn't have done that, we would have been able to see these things and anticipate these problems. But we've been playing catch up.
You can still shit on Trump and do this honestly.
You could do it the right way, but no. And this is why we get the latest executive order on the refugee administration, courtesy of Biden, as of. And this is what he was getting so much heat for this last night, because as of Friday, April 16th, the memorandum for the Secretary of State on the emergency presidential determination on refugee administrations for fiscal year 2021, the current amount, we're just going to boil it down there. It's the same exact amount as the Trump administration had in place. 15,000, 7,000 from Africa, 1,000 from East Asia, 1,500 from Europe and Central Asia, 3,000 from Latin America and the Caribbean, 1,500 from Near East and South Asia, and 1,000 unallocated reserve.
Racist.
Which is still the lowest it's ever been, like you said before. It's still
lower than Obama, lower than anything.
But he kept it the same.
Racist.
After promising, what was the number that he promised before? It was like 62,500. He was going to raise it to 62,500. He promised that on the campaign trail.
That's a big
And now
difference.
he's saying that it seems unlikely.
That's a big difference.
I have an article here from rescue.org that came from the International Rescue Committee from back in October 28, 2020, right?
Yeah.
Tears President Trump up left and right, up and down, for lowering it to its lowest level of 15,000 refugees for that year. Biden is carrying the same exact thing, which is exactly why people like Ilhan Omar and even Tom Cotton is jumping on this train, saying this is not okay. He's putting his, and now he's starting to walk it back like they're going to readdress it in a few months.
Well, and it's interesting because part of the issue from the governmental perspective on processing people at the border is trying to decipher the claims, right? Trying to decide whether or not they're legitimate claims to asylum, and we have to figure this out. These are refugees. They're actively, they have legitimate claims to asylum. They're fucking refugees from countries at war for one reason or another.
Yep.
Their question of whether or not they need asylum is no longer. It doesn't exist. They're refugees. They don't have a home anymore.
Yep.
What's the holdup here? Like,
what's the holdup?
What's the fucking question here?
I mean, you could, if you were smart about it, you could blame it on COVID and the increased risk and the inability to test, blah blah blah. You could make up something, but no, they don't. They'll just say, it's this is where we're at. This is where we're gonna keep it for now because this is where we're at. It's absolutely insane. I didn't realize how much I relied on Twitter as my news aggregator until last night when I haven't been able to fucking use it. It's driving me nuts because trying to just go through like the Google News app or something like that, like I found myself having to, if I wanted to find a particular topic that I knew wasn't friendly to the current administration, I would literally have to go to DuckDuckGo to find these articles from back in 2020 or 2019 because you can't find them on Google right now. You cannot find them because they are censoring all of that data, putting it all the way down on page fucking 10. You go to DuckDuckGo, you search it out, you put in a date, boom, it's right there at the top, right there for you to pick. That's how I found that article. It's absolutely insane. All these people that were tearing Trump up left and right for lowering the cap down to 15,000. At least some of them now are coming out against Biden in that situation. It's bad, dude. It is real bad. Because, again, just like we've talked about many times, not a single conversation being had about trying to fix the structure of our immigration policy. so
No.
that we can handle whatever kind of capacity we want.
No, apparently they have introduced some type of, immigration reform plan that they have put out, but they're obviously not riding it very hard, so
no. Which you should, because that's how you take the pressure off you as a politician. If you want to make the correct political move, you don't need to pretend like it's not happening. You need to redirect attention to the efforts of getting that problem fixed.
yeah.
Not when people are asking, well, why haven't you fixed this? Well, you know what? This is what we've done. We've gone to the Congress and we're pushing through because we know that this system is actually systemic. This is an actual systemic issue that we have here. You can ride that all night long.
Yeah.
Progressives love that term, systemic failures. You ride that all day long and put the onus on Congress, so then they have some pressure to act. But they won't do that because they're not going to be able to come up with a cohesive plan in any kind of relevant time frame to be able to to pull the pressure off them for midterms. Otherwise, they're going to lose the entire House when it comes midterm time because they've all been in power. They've held both the Senate and the House and the White House,
Right.
and they continue to get nothing done.
Well, and as of now, because the administration has been so dishonest about what it would take to see instrumental change in the immigration system, Congress on both sides is able to step back and say the executive is fucking up. Until they fix their deal, we're not changing the system. We're not going to fix it because they can't even handle what we have right now.
Yep.
Even though we know, all the inside players know that Congress has to, start
do it.
that change. But because of the way the Biden administration has played this, they can't even now start talking about, oh, well, we can't do anything because of Flores, because all this stuff. Like, it has to be Congress.
Yep.
They have to just keep riding out.
That's why I get so tired.
Humane, it's this. Like, we're doing the right thing. Trump is a piece of shit. Like,
So I get so tired of hearing how much of a political chess player Biden has always been, and he's so good at getting things done.
yeah.
It's like, no, he's not.
He knows how the game
He's
works.
terrible. He knows how the political game works. Yeah. He knows how to stay in power. That's what he knows how to do. He doesn't know how to get anything substantial done. I've worked with, I don't even want to go there. It's
I forgot one. On the 12th, Axios was reporting at the border, and they were at the McAllen underpass facility. They said hundreds of migrants, very young children, and they were trying to hold them for only 8 hours before being sent to local charities. At the McAllen facility, they're being sent to local charities.
Oh, that's where we're at.
We've seen Alex Jones, if Alex Jones is to be believed, we saw him interfere with a charity that was just fucking shoving kids in the back of a car, just taking them somewhere.
Trafficking.
No car seats, no fucking whatever, just taking them wherever.
They were in the back, the trunk of an SUV.
Yes.
Whatever that is.
No
that back
seatbelts,
space.
no car seats,
Nope.
no anything.
Just loaded them in, and he called them out. We saw the video. Something's gonna have to give here real soon, man. Pressure's getting really
You can't
high.
continue like this, man.
No.
It's
Unsustainable.
you got kids being raped at the border.
Yeah. Under an executive branch agency. That I don't.
With no plans to do anything about it. No plans
Nope.
to close the facility. No plans to
It
stop
just
moving
is.
children there. We're just gonna keep processing them. Just gonna keep running through. Hopefully they're not there too long to get raped too many times. Hopefully. Fuck.
It's messed up, man. It is so messed up. But yeah, it was nice to see that executive order come through. Or what passes for an executive order now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see.
It's so bad.
We'll see what happens.
So bad.
Till then, we'll keep you updated. We talk about these things pretty regularly on our Twitters, our social media. I'm at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Alfie on both of those things. You can find all this on our saltofthestreets.com. We also have Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our Facebook, Facebook at Salt of the Streets. We have our YouTube at Salt of the Streets, where you're watching this right now. If you're watching it, leave us a comment, a like, share it with your friends so they know where to find and get some good, honest information. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, leave us a rating and a review. If you screenshot the review and send it to me, I will give you $5 off of a t-shirt. If you can tell me where the closing line of this show came from, we'll give you a free t-shirt. I will deliver it to you, send it to you, whatever you want. Make sure if you are in Bremerton and you need a haircut, go and see Swell Blended. You can find them on Instagram at Swell Blended. And if you need a skateboard, go down to Location Skate Shop. Jordan just went there to try and get me a sweatshirt. They are sold out of all sizes except for small and extra large, double extra large. So it seems like it was a decent day down there at Location Skate Shop. So I did ask her to drop off those stickers and stuff. So we'll see whether or not she actually did it. fucking Jordan. I'm just
She
kidding.
got this.
Sure
She got this.
Yep. So, and if not, then I'll just go down there this week and I'll drop them off and I'll hopefully get a sweatshirt. So,
Hell
I'd love
yeah.
to be able to wear one of those sweatshirts on the show. Paul said that he's working on some gear too. So, we'll get
Nice.
some gear from Paul. Larry, if you're still listening, give me your fucking address so that I can send you some shirts so that you can send me some shirts. Jordan has hit him up several times and been like, hey, what's your address so I can do this? And he's like, focus on your business stuff.
I love Larry.
Said they do have the business cards. There you go. So you can go down to Location Skate Shop. They do have the business cards. They got the stickers. They got all the stuff. So
Look at you. She's like, "Nuh-uh, motherfucker.
that's-
I am on it."
It's like, I fucking did it. Don't you
Don't
try
you
and
throw
slander
this
me
at
because
me.
you think I'm not listening.
No.
So that's awesome.
Ye of little faith.
Great store. Location Skate Shop is sick. Glad to hear it.
What an awesome location too, man. I just
Yes,
can't get over
that's
that.
a
That is
great
primo
spot, dude. When I did skateboard, I used to go down to the waterfront and skateboard all the time down by the ferry just because the sidewalks and everything are so nice.
Yeah, it's a nice
just,
spot.
It's just nice down there. Yeah,
'cause
and there's lots
most
of good
other that
ledges and
area of
stuff.
Bremerton sucks.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
place, their roads are terrible. Shoot.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan. I think that that's a great thing.
All right, so we are sitting about 3 hours right now. So
Okay.
I'm thinking, I feel like if I had a vote, I would want to talk more about the troop pullout from Afghanistan than the Russian fuckery right now.
Okay.
If I had to pick between the two.
I think that we can do that.
Okay. I think
So it was
as a
on-
preface,
Yes.
we should just quickly touch on the Trump administration's negotiations, controversial negotiations, I will add, with the Taliban
Yes.
towards the closing end of his administration's time in power, where
I have
they
to go pee. Yeah, you talk.
okay, where they established a treaty, if you will, with the Taliban that U.S. troops would be withdrawn by May 1st. It was a promise that was made, and ideally it was a promise that was going to be kept. We were very excited about it at the time because, our stance on, our wars in the Middle East that have never ended and so on and so forth is pretty cut and dry. We understand that there are definite fallout to deal with upon a U.S. troop pullout because, you do it the wrong way, you do it the right way. There's always implications because we've been there for 20 years come September. There is always going to be a problem. One of the main problems is militaries in these particular countries don't exactly work like ours do. They're not as regimented, if you will. They're not as westernized is probably the best way to say it. And I think calling into question the legitimacy and the true power and control that these countries' governments actually has on their populace, is something that needs to be brought in as well. Realistically, when you look at particularly Afghanistan, you basically have two camps, right? You have the government camp and the various tribes that side with the current presidential governmental system that is in place over there. There is a president of Afghanistan that does have a particular amount of power. But then you also have the Taliban, who essentially are a governing body in themselves that a multiplicity of tribes in Afghanistan hold their allegiance to the Taliban governance versus what we'd think of as the state governance. So the idea being that we had an agreement with the Taliban to have all U.S. troops out of Afghanistan by May 1st was in play, and there were particular, I don't want to say benchmarks, but there was guidelines and things that were happening there where like, okay, well, we can't have any more specific attacks during this time period. We're going to conditions. Thank you. We're going to agree to these things, and if everybody holds up and we're all good, then we'll be out by May 1st. Well, news flash, everybody. I saw the headlines coming through last week.
Yeah.
Super jazzed. The Biden administration has done it. The Biden-Harris administration has done it. By September 11th, 2021, our troops will be out of Afghanistan. And there was celebration throughout the land.
Yeah.
Until a few people realized, wait a minute, that is well past the deadline that is already in place. So now the rhetoric has changed so that the troop withdrawal will start on May 1st and will conclude September 11th, 2021. And before we get into the nitty-gritty details about this, I just want to say, why in the hell would anybody
It seem odd.
in their right mind choose the date of September 11th, the 20-year anniversary of the attack on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and that plane that went down in Pennsylvania? Why is that the day you choose to pick your pull out of the troops? Right? That,
Yeah.
for one, is morbid to me. I understand that you could probably kind of twist it in a way and be like, all right, well, it's 20 years and now we're out. Yay. It's bad. It's really, really bad. You shouldn't have that date as some kind of celebratory date in the future. That is a terrible, terrible optical decision. I don't know who in their right mind came up with it, but it's bad. It's very, very bad.
Tradition.
Yeah, tradition.
So,
anyways.
This comes on the heels of, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks because the administration has been getting questions as it approached April and then May, what they were going to do.
Are we going to make the deadline?
On the 5th, they were asked if they were leaving Afghanistan in May, and they said, it's going to be tough. It's going to take time to make the right decision.
So tough.
And then
to decide to stop a war.
it's so hard. Let's see. And I have a little bit more in here.
Oh, yeah, because as soon as the updated date, the delayed date came out and everybody was celebrating, you had the standard, I don't even want to say neocons anymore because they're not. It's just the war hawks from both parties come out and be like, well, this is a really bad idea. Lindsey Graham obviously was the first one to be like, well, this is a terrible decision. And
Mitch McConnell said
Yep.
the U.S. is turning tail and running from Afghanistan. We have spent 20 years and billions of dollars in Afghanistan.
Stacks.
To characterize it as turning tail and running away, I think, is not a very...
Yeah. How much blood and treasure has been expended?
To which
end, I might add. To what end?
To which Jen Psaki responded that the Biden administration felt there was no military solution to the war in Afghanistan.
Which I would probably somewhat agree with.
Yeah. She was then asked about, what about, and this has been a big thing from the Democrats who are now in favor of staying, right? What about the women and children? What about all the rights? What about the human rights? What about the minorities in Afghanistan? And she said, the U.S. are supporters of women and children women and girls around the globe. Like we're this, we're this, we're this.
Mm-hmm.
To which my question would be, right? If we are so concerned about women's rights, children's rights around the globe, why are we actively involved with arms deals with the Saudis, with pretty much anybody in the Middle East, China that we're talking about all the time? If we're so concerned about women and children and human rights abuses, why are we doing all of these things with all of the other people? We're not even willing to slap MBS on the hand for having a journalist murdered who disagreed with his opinion, and yet we're going to talk about how we
lived in America at the time.
Talking about we support the rights of women and children around the globe.
Yes. Sounds good.
So good.
Sounds good. So we're going to see how this turns out, but essentially that's the nitty-gritty of it. They've had a delayed date now to September 11th. Troop withdrawal is supposed to start on May 1st.
Yeah,
that being said,
ABC also. What about the women and children?
What about the women
what
and
about
children?
the women? And then they talked about the contractors. Who knows about the contractors?
The contractors.
What's going to happen with the contractors? Because
we're talking about
knows
just the
there are
active duty military presence.
Security contractors, there are technology contractors, there are private contractors for many different departments that are in the Middle East right now for many, many, many different reasons.
Many reasons.
They said that the Taliban was unlikely to attack again, which is, in the scope of like a 9/11, like they're unlikely to carry out another terrorist attack. Which,
really,
if I heard the government say that and I was the Taliban, I'd be like, "Let's go, bitch! We're going now. It's unlikely. Let's fucking go then. Let's go."
Yep.
Because that's what you do, is you tell your enemies exactly what you don't expect them to do.
Yep.
So good. Let's see, on the 14th, Jen Psaki was asked, what about a plan to ensure the Taliban doesn't come back? And is there potential that Joe Biden changed his mind? She said, well, we will be monitoring and disrupting activity in the area, which, if you're disrupting activity in the area, then you definitely still have assets on the ground there. They said they're going to be doing it with NATO, and that Joe Biden would not be changing his mind. So regardless of what happens, we're leaving on September 11th. Doesn't matter. Everybody out by September 11th.
I'll put money on that when I see it.
Yeah, and so She asked, so are special operations and special forces included in leaving Afghanistan? I'm not going to, preview any type of details or anything like that. Like this, just so we're going to take out the regular guys. We're going to take out the grunts and the boots. We're going to just replace them with special forces. Have some more on that in just a little bit. Let's see. She was then asked, what incentive does the Taliban have to make a deal with you and not just wait until America is gone and continue with whatever they want? Shit you not, this is what she says. We trust the Taliban won't let Afghanistan become a pariah state.
That is a ridiculous thing to say.
Yes. We trust that the Taliban gives a shit about being involved in the global community at all, because they seem to have given us so much indication that they really care about their global standing over the last 20 years. They care so much.
Let's put it this way. The Taliban, and I was previewing this as you were gone, but the Taliban essentially is a governing body. They are a
at this point,
religiously fundamental governing body, and
with a very active military force.
Yes, because part of the reason we are in Afghanistan is to maintain the legitimacy of their current quote-unquote democratically elected government. That is part of the reason why we are there, is to assist in the Taliban, or assist the Afghani government in not allowing the Taliban government to come in and overthrow the currently democratically elected government. Right?
Yeah.
That is why we entered into negotiations with the Taliban. Our original mission from going there was to find and kill Osama bin Laden, right?
Yes.
We've been there, done that. Came, saw, he died, whatever,
And that's Jen Psaki continues to reference that. Well, the original goal, of our surge there was to make sure that we could limit the Taliban, and we feel that we've accomplished this goal. You're pulling the George Bush mission accomplished without the fucking flag. That's all that you're doing. You're saying we accomplished the original intent that we're there. Even though I'm now telling you, in the same breath, that the whole war is different now. We can't look at this through a 2000 view. We have to look at it through a 2021 view.
Because it's about unifying the government.
But we accomplished that original goal in 2000.
Yep.
But we can't look at it through that prism anymore, because that's not how the war is anymore. But we accomplished that original goal. So just like the same thing, right? It's like the same thing.
It's like
not
the
a big
same
deal.
thing. What I am mostly afraid of at this point, right? And I can just see it happening. So, I just, if I was going to, I'll be very surprised if it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
May 1st comes along. The troop withdrawal begins, and the Taliban, as is their right because of the treaty that was signed, say, okay, all bets are off. The treaty is null and void. You still have your troops here. Game back on.
Let's go, bitch.
And then then it's, okay, September 11th goes by. It's gone. We're there. We'll have more troops on the ground. We'll be continuing this ridiculous nonsense for another generation or two. This is the forever war. There's a reason we call it that, because everyone, both sides of the aisle, is refusing to even enter into a conversation about leaving.
Well, and the White House hasn't even committed to putting in place an ambassador to Afghanistan before they leave. Like, they can't even say that they're going to do that,
Which just shows that if that doesn't show your disingenuous intentions from the get-go, I don't know what does.
And this is the last thing I think I have as far as press briefings go. Someone, I wish I wrote down who it was quoted as saying there was a significant chance that the Taliban fills the vacuum in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And so she was asked to respond to that. And she said, we believe that it can be, quote unquote, kept to a level that can be managed without the consistent footprint of us being there.
Nation building is fun to watch.
Yep.
That's all we're talking about.
So, we talked about the contractors, right?
Yes.
We have talked many, many times before about security contractors, military contractors. There are a high level, no one could tell you exactly how many contractors there are in Afghanistan, in Iraq, apparently in Somalia, in all kinds of different places around the globe. So I happen to know somebody who is actively a security contractor in Afghanistan.
Ooh.
Happened to know somebody.
Security contract.
Just so happened to be.
Interesting.
Used to be active duty, did a tour in Iraq, and is now a security contractor in Afghanistan.
Interesting. I wonder what makes somebody go into that after their time in service. Something that happened when they were
just got out, and they were like, "Hey, we'll give you this.
You remember that?
We know that you just did a tour in Iraq.
Yep. Remember that pittance that the government used to pay you? Well, how about this number?
Yeah. He's younger than me by like 2 years, I think. So,
interesting.
Got out of high school, joined the military, went into the army, did a tour, fucked up his back, and is now. So I'm sure they were also like, that back of yours, we'll fucking fix it for you.
Get it fixed up.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be good now because he's fucking out there lifting weights of shit in the desert. They were doing informal weightlifting competitions on the base. Yeah,
of course.
So this person that I know here, I obviously was the person I thought of them when this was announced. It was like, okay, well, I know somebody on the ground there, and this person's a contractor. There's no guarantees about contractors. I'm very curious as to if they've received guidance of like, hey, we're gonna be gone by September. Like, this is what we're doing here. So I asked, obviously, originally about if they had received any guidance, and said it's always been said that the security contractors are going to be the last ones out, right? And so typically it goes the military and then the support contractors, which are like the technology people, you know this, but for them. So the people that are there to do the internet, I mean, all those things.
Yep.
You have
to get the infrastructure set up.
You have to get American people to go and do American internet so that you can run military shit on it. That's how it has to go. It has to be a closed system. It's got so we have American contractors that we send to the Middle East to establish infrastructure that the military can't build itself. And they stay there to maintain that infrastructure until they're gone. Or somebody is there under that contract to maintain that infrastructure while they're gone, right? Famously, one of the people that was killed in the attack of 13 hours, right, was somebody who was there to do the internet. That was one of the people that died there. He was just a contractor, just a technologies contractor, just there to set up the internet. That's what he was there for when he died.
Interesting.
So it goes the military, and then support contractors, and then the security contractors, right? The military is the only people that, as of now, are supposed to be out by September 11th.
Yep.
Right?
And I would have to try to find that treaty, but I would imagine that's the only thing that is stated in the treaty because the U.S. government doesn't really have any actual power over private contractors there, unless they have government contracts.
Yes. And for security reasons, I don't know where this person is deployed to right now. I don't know that.
It's a healthy thing.
Yes. They did say that right now it was all rumors if they were leaving Afghanistan soon, but they did hear that one of the main posts around them was being shut down within 2 weeks, right? To shut down a military outpost is not an easy thing, right?
Yep.
We then start to talk about like how long it will take, So you're saying that you sound like it's going to take longer than September 11th to really get out all of the Americans. You know, military might be out by September 11th. There's going to be a lot more Americans there, support contractors, security contractors. Said 100% it'll take longer. Because the way that I'm thinking, I've never talked about it like higher ups or anything like that, but with knowledge and logistics, if they want every soldier, Marine, airman, sailor out of Afghanistan, and you're really talking about the Middle East, you're talking about years. The amount of infrastructure that is there, the amount of vehicles that are there, the amount of, like I said, infrastructure, aircraft, ships that are over there, buildings, equipment, vehicles, aircraft, classified and non-classified documents, hard drives, whatever they want. They want Americans truly gone. It's going to take longer than 9/11. And not that it's impossible, but if you truly are going to get everyone out by 9/11, it's going to be a 24/7 overhaul, everybody going all hours of the day to pack things up, burn things, destroy things, secure things so they can get the fuck out of there.
Man, you would have to muster a force of just extraction vehicles, a size of which you could not send because you would trigger, say, like Iran into saying that you were about to set up an invasion.
Yes.
It would be that big.
So this person had been there for a couple of months, and there's, with
that.
this particular company, their contract runs out like halfway through the deployment there.
Okay.
So now there's discussion of, well, are we going to renew the contract for just until December or whatever, even though that's, or for through the end of the year. And so there's discussion of whether or not they're going to renew the contract and keep people there, or they're going to just be done with it and pull everybody out
Yeah.
before the military even leaves. And so with that, right, then you're talking about if the contract is extended,
Yep.
there's going to be less and less military. There's going to be less and less security and support personnel required, in which you're talking about a bare bones force inside of a military outpost with limited military support. You are asking
That is a
for
problem.
the death of Americans.
That
You're
is a
asking
problem.
after you have violated your peace agreement with the Taliban and said, we're just going to do what we want. You
Yep.
are asking for the death of Americans.
Which is an excuse that they are waiting on bated breath
To go back in.
to go back in or build up. That's none of this makes any sense.
And because there's such limited guidance with the federal government,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
even more limited guidance with these private companies that are there because they don't know what the fuck they're going to have to do.
Nope.
They're having all of this comes out of their pocket. It's all because they're a private company, so they're having to pay for everything. It's not just an endless bankroll that comes out of the taxpayers' pockets.
Which
they
is
have to think
not-
about bottom lines, what makes sense, what's going to actually make them money, the number of people you have to have there to make sense to get the job done to still make money.
Yep. Because
know?
that is, I mean, it's all in the contracts. You only get so much. Otherwise, you have to renegotiate your contract. Even if you're going to cut your contract short, you have to renegotiate how that's going to work so that the government doesn't end up having to pay you out for the whole contract.
Right.
If you got like another year left on that contract, then they're going to have to.
Going to keep paying.
Yeah, you're either going to keep paying, and just null and void the contract and pay them out.
And at the point when we're talking about getting the infrastructure out, the equipment, the cars, all this stuff, right?
Yeah, because you can't just leave that.
Right. So that's what I was just going to say. In Vietnam, right, when we were leaving Vietnam, we ended up wanting to leave so fast, we just left things. We
Yeah.
just left fields full of jeeps, there's
Oh, yeah.
famously, there's images of them shoving a helicopter off of a boat when they're trying to leave, all kinds of the shit because they're just trying to leave, just trying to get the fuck out,
Yep.
right? So,
Jeez.
but you're also talking about, especially now, millions of dollars of waste if you leave that equipment there. And there were years, like close to a decade, when and you also don't want the Taliban to get this shit.
Yeah.
Right? There were years where like a decade almost, where soldiers were dragging destroyed MRAPs and Humvees back miles and miles and miles, towing them back to base so the Taliban wouldn't get them.
Yep.
Having their people dying to guard destroyed vehicles so they could be towed out so that the Taliban didn't fucking get them, you know? So you're talking about, I can't imagine a world in which the federal government leaves any of that shit there with how adamant they've been about not wanting the Taliban to get their infrastructure now, and so there is no way the entirety of the armed forces are getting out by September 11th. There's no way.
So then in a political sense, what we're dealing with here is essentially it's a bait and switch.
Yes.
We're gonna go ahead and say all the right things to get the support from the American people, blah blah blah, and then there's gonna be an egregious attack because we broke the peace treaty, which is gonna allow us to stay there, and then we don't have to deal with these pesky people trying to say we got to leave the Middle East.
There have already been reports of the Taliban mounting up a large force for an attack in the coming weeks.
Of course,
Because there's already been reports of that.
May 1st is coming, and the minute we don't meet the May 1st deadline, that treaty's null and void, and we're done, and then we're just there. So we don't actually have to move all that stuff out, so they don't actually have to plan on it.
Yeah. So this person, I asked them
Oh, that's depressing.
if they thought that it was, let's see, if they thought that it was the right time to leave, or if they thought there was more for America to do. They said they did think that it was the right time to leave, if nothing else for the fact that their government and their army has become so dependent on the U.S. military that at this point there's no hopes of them accomplishing the original goal of being there.
Yeah.
There is an insane amount of crime and theft. Their commanders down to everyday soldiers. The only guys that take their job seriously and still believe the Taliban and the ISIS are still around are the commandos. And so the special forces are the only people in that country that are taking it any type of seriously. The regular Afghan Defense Force, all that shit, they just don't give a fuck. The people who are running the country are way more interested in padding their bank accounts in Saudi Arabia than they are in fixing anything here, because America will just continue to fill their pockets with dollars.
Yeah.
And this particular person that I was talking to, like I said, was in Iraq, and they were talking about just how much more intense the fighting was in Iraq than it is in Afghanistan. And I just found that it took me a long time to reply to him because I was trying to, I just was thinking a lot, and
It's a lot to intake.
and I find it very interesting that, You have someone who is telling me that when they were in Iraq, there were special forces people being killed because the fighting was so much more intense, and no one is talking about Iraq.
Yeah.
No one is discussing Iraq, right? And for a minute, I was trying to like parse with like, well, then why are we Afghanistan, like all this stuff? And so it makes sense that if people aren't dying in Afghanistan, then you're going to want to take people out there. But if it is happening in Iraq and there's obviously a fucking problem there, then why are we not talking about it? You know what I'm saying? It's I'm hard pressed to believe in my mind that it's just the 20 years that the media cares so much about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that seems weird because we got people all over the globe who don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give a fuck. So
it's because we haven't gotten to the point yet where it's the status of South Korea. We haven't gotten to the point where we just are a permanent military presence consistently running small-time operations and having that just be another international base at which an active duty soldier will be stationed. Just like in Germany and all of it.
Even though when Barack Obama was in office, our war in Iraq was over.
Yep.
We pulled all the troops out. For some reason, we have the exact... So there's 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, 2,500 troops in Iraq. Fighting is more severe in Iraq. More people are dying in Iraq. No one is talking about it. It just seems very weird. You know?
Yeah,
it's
because
the whole
topic
thing
du jour is just
make
Afghanistan.
sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, because the Iraqi thing is... We've already gone past the point where it made sense, because what did we invade Iraq for? Weapons of mass destruction, Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
That was done a long time ago, right? We've been done with that for a while, so we just move on. And the Afghanistan situation's been there since September 11th and beyond. But you know, there's really nothing they can hang their hat on to why we're there anymore, other than just fighting off the Taliban from usurping governmental power and it becoming a state run by the Taliban. It doesn't make sense anymore, unless, of course, you subscribe to the world police syndrome, which I think everybody in Congress, anyways, does. The ones that fight for us to stay, and I go, well, why are we there? Well, because it's dangerous. We gotta protect the women and children.
Yeah. What about the women?
What about the women and children
rights?
Yeah.
What about the severe advances in women's rights?
How about LGBTQ rights? How's that going over there?
Yeah.
Not so great. Yeah, so that'll be, for a minute, at least when Trump was in office, for a minute, I had hopes that we would be out at some point. If Trump would have got a second term, I could have seen it happening.
Yeah.
I could have seen it as a real possibility.
But I'm concerned now that
it's just going to be a reignition of...
The pullout's going to be done so sloppy,
There ain't going to be no pullout.
Yeah.
There ain't going to be a pullout, bro. If I had to put my money on it, it's not happening. They're going to find an excuse. Because they've stated internationally that we are going to renege on the treaty. I don't know why there's not fighting right now. But if the Taliban were quote unquote smart, they would wait till after May 1st and then do it. But it ends the same way. We'll put it that way. With probably more troops on the ground long term.
Yeah. That's no good.
It's no good. At this point, let's just call it the American Empire. Let's just annex all these places like Russia does with Ukraine.
Just live up to...
And then we'll just make sure that in those governments, there is at least a 60-40 majority of, ethnically Afghani people that run their government, and then the rest can be whoever the hell in the rest of the American empire. It's the only way for it to stop, because that's what is happening, just without coming right out and saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're establishing bases in foreign countries, just like we've done with every single adversary we've ever dealt with since World War II.
We'll just be like Rome. You can worship whoever you want. You can do whatever you want.
Just
you're a
follow these
Roman
rules.
city, though. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
You're an American city. Do whatever you want.
Just
we don't
pay
care.
taxes.
You're part of America now.
That's right.
America.
You get blue jeans and DVDs.
Blue jeans and DVDs. VHSs, bitch. We got a lot of them. Don't know what to do with them.
Don't know what to do with them.
Here you go.
Jesus Christ. So yeah, we'll end on a high note.
Jesus.
On that one.
Yeah. So that's.
I wasn't as nihilistic about that until we started talking about it, and then I'm like, yeah, no. This ain't happening.
The
Period.
security contractor thing was big for me. It was really, really big for me, especially
It's a telltale sign.
especially with Austin, whatever his name is. His last name is Austin. The Secretary of Defense being part of Raytheon. You know, like you have the security companies moving closer and closer and closer to the White House. You know, we have had for years security companies talking about Lloyd Austin. That's his name.
Lloyd Austin.
Talking about
The third, apparently.
privatizing the war in Afghanistan, you know, through different various security contractors. So I am increasingly concerned that that's exactly what we're looking at. Not only because I don't believe we should have private companies acting on parts of the military, but it doesn't.
We want to defund the police, bro. We want to defund the police, and we're going to be okay with having privately funded and operated wars overseas. That seems so American
awesome.
in 2021, though. It's so
awesome.
it would make so much sense. God, this place. What is going on?
It's awesome.
I'm quickly becoming an accelerationist.
The
What
fuck
that
is
is?
that?
That means the end of the nation as we know it is nigh.
Oh.
And we just need to hurry up and get there.
The end
Because
is
I'm
nigh.
tired of watching this slow death. It's becoming unbearable to watch
dark
the
time.
country slowly ripping itself apart. But anyways, I also have a Michael Malice theory about the white pill. You know about his white pill, black pill?
I feel like
It's
I've
a lot of pills.
heard that.
'Cause the orange pill. Remember that? I was trying to think
Yes,
about that
yeah,
one.
the
That
orange
one was
pill.
already taken. Yeah, Michael Malice got a theory about, he wants to white pill people, which is like more or less fill you with hope. But the caveat being, you got to kind of subscribe to his method of anarchism for it to be a good thing that this is happening. Because the more the country falls apart, the more anarchistic the nation will become. We will have some kind of weird loose coalition of states, blah blah blah, but then everybody will be much more, free, and so you should be happy about that. And that's the white pill.
You know, I actually saw just the other day that someone talking about, it was like a meme, about from one of those libertarian accounts that I follow, that somebody was talking about how, my parents always shit on me for talking about wanting to be an anarchist, and he said, tell your parents that anarchy is a happier lifestyle than we're living right now. It's like,
Yeah,
that cuts so deep.
it does.
It cuts so deep.
It ain't wrong. Definitely ain't wrong. Not in my eyes. Oh yeah, good times. Good times.
All bad news.
All bad news. Welcome to Salt the Streets. All bad news all the time, baby.
All bad news all the time.
This is why you got to tune in for the pre-show, because generally speaking, it's a little lighter and more fluffy.
A little bit.
We could talk about movies and music and pop culture-y stuff and, lighter fun topics, small topics, not these big heavy discussions that we do here on the full show. And it's also available on YouTube. It's also live, just like this show is. So you can come jump in. You could, if you vehemently agree with something we're saying, you could tell us in the chat, and then we'll have a nice little conversation right there.
Yes.
It's a fantastic. I love technology. Now that I'm starting to learn more about how to use it. I tried my hand at 3D animation. So I'm working on a. You know how I just like to put it in this kind of perspective, right? When you watch Crowder, they have like that, show starting soon thing, and then it ticks down, right? And then it goes into the opening, and there's all this animation and all this. I want to be able to do that. So, and I know I can do that on my editing program and all this because it's super powerful. I just don't know how to use it. I tried that last week, and it was just like, I definitely need to get a degree from YouTube University in this first before I can attempt this, because right now it's just frustrating.
That makes sense.
But yeah, that's something I think be a fun little side project to do, is to actually shoot and produce a legitimate opening trailer we could run
Yeah.
right before we go live.
Let me ask you,
Fun.
did you end up coming up with a hill to die on last night?
No,
Okay, cool. Me either.
I did not.
Thank God.
Thank
Thank God.
God. Yeah, everything we talk about today is definitely a hill to die on.
Yeah.
Here's a little fake one. My hill to die on this week is keeping a hawk eye on Russia, as there are all indications point to them about being ready to pull the trigger on invasion of Ukraine.
Look at
Oh
that.
my gosh, he's skateboarding. Oh, that is the coolest thing. Oh yeah. Oh look, he's ollieing.
All right, bud, let's get a jump. Let's see a jump.
Do it. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Dude, he's got some dope shorts, by the way.
Yeah, he
Rocking
loves those
it.
shorts.
It's like a neon green thing. That is killer. And if
That's
you want to
awesome.
see that adorable video, did you just post that on our
I'm-
story?
I'm doing it right now.
Then you'll be able to follow us on our Salt of the Streets Instagram at Salt of the Streets. You can follow Donovan and I on our personal social medias. He is at alpaca_ on Instagram and Salt of the Street on Twitter. I am at Big Bird Offie on both those things. And until I get my account back from Twitter, I'm usually very active on Twitter.
Yes.
And our Facebook at Salt of the Streets, fuck Facebook. And obviously you're watching this on YouTube, so you can find anything that we do there. There's even little extra videos, like when Don does an impromptu, impassioned Instagram live stream. I will rip that shit off the internet real quick and
Yes.
throw it right back up on our YouTube.
Like we did earlier this week, I addressed something that Joe Biden said about no amendment being absolute, in which I will just remind you guys that no piece of paper provides you your rights. Our Constitution does only one thing, and that is tell the government what they cannot infringe upon. All it does is tell you that your rights are inalienable and inherent within you. That is all. No government, no piece of paper can tell you what you can and cannot do with yourself or the best way for you to defend yourself or your freedoms.
That video is called Dom's Live Streams, Your Rights, and it is 9 minutes and 31 seconds long.
There
It's
you
a
go.
real short clip. Get on there, watch it.
I
You'll
just
be
shared
better
it.
person for it.
Just shared it to my Twitter earlier today. It is on our Instagram for when it was originally loaded. So you can go there. It's on our IGTV page. All of that.
Boom.
I don't think there's anything else that I want to hit.
Did you watch any good movies this week?
Let's see, what
Anything
did I
that just
watch
reaches
this
out?
week? I started watching Impractical Jokers because it is on HBO
Max?
Max.
Nice.
I
HBO Max is
watched-
pretty solid.
HBO Max is pretty legit.
I'm a
Yeah.
solid. I'm about ready to drop Netflix just because I don't ever watch anything on Netflix anymore.
Continue watching. Let's see what did I watch. I watched Ted this week.
Ted,
I watched Ted.
great film
Strong.
on HBO.
On HBO Max.
Yep, I almost did there too.
Yep. I watched the movie Argo. I
Argo.
watched Argo with Ben Affleck.
Yep, I heard that's good. I haven't watched it.
Fucking great.
I've heard
it was a
yeah.
great movie.
It's the
It is about the Iranian hostage crisis during the
70s?
Carter administration. I believe it was during the 70s, yeah. And Ben Affleck plays a CIA contractor. I believe he's a contractor. Or maybe he still worked for the CIA at the time. And he's like an exfil expert. And so he devises this enormous cover story of a movie production so that he can sneak into Iran and pull these people out that the Iran government didn't know had escaped from the embassy at the time. There was like 6 people that escaped from the embassy and were hiding in a Canadian ambassador's private residence. And
wow.
yes, and so
Was he successful?
yes,
Yikes.
yep. So Ben Affleck was able to devise this cover story of them shooting a science fiction movie, and so they're doing location scouting. That's why I said they were there. So to different desert scenes and stuff like
So
that.
once again, Ben Affleck saves the world.
Once again. Also watched Chasing Amy again last week.
Oh, I haven't seen that in so
Love
long.
Chasing Amy.
That's
Oh, I
Kevin Smith movie,
love-
right?
Yes.
Yep. One of the original
Yes.
now awesome ones.
The great thing about Chasing Amy is that if you're obsessed with Kevin Smith like I am, then you know that
Loaded with Easter eggs?
It's loaded with Easter eggs, but he also made that movie as a way to deal with his own personal trauma.
Oh wow.
And so there is a scene in this movie, the diner scene, in which Ben Affleck just finds out that his girlfriend is bi, and she's like done all this crazy stuff with girls, and he feels really self-conscious and doesn't know what to do with himself, and like shamed her a little bit, and he's meeting up with Jay and Silent Bob to give them money because of their likeness rights in the comic books. That's neither here nor there. And when they're there, Silent Bob speaks up for, I think, the first time in the series. I think that's the first time that he talks. And he has a monologue that's, beautifully written, beautifully delivered, partially because Kevin Smith wrote it and then delivers it. But the monologue is a true story about Kevin Smith breaking up with a girl because he was intimidated about her sexual history, and that's what this whole movie is about.
Wow.
And so the monologue that he delivers is the whole reason they made the movie. And it was just a way for him to process his feelings. Amazing.
That dude is such an inspiration.
Amazing.
Man. On a
Yeah.
creative level, on a personal level, the guy is just. I'm dumbfounded every time I learn something more about him. Like, you can't be
wonder-
more awesome. And then he continues to get more awesome.
I wonder if we can play that. Just his monologue. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? I don't think we're big enough at this point that we'd get kicked off for doing
Silent
it.
Bob monologue chasing Amy. Because it's worth it. It's worth it.
4
I
minutes?
feel. I'll end the show on 4 minutes of chasing Amy if you're cool with it. I don't.
We could do
you
that.
know?
We don't want to deprive people of a T-shirt, but
No, certainly. I'll do the ending line now, and then we'll watch the 4 minutes of it, and then we'll cut the show.
okay, let me
How
just
does that
get this
sound?
prepped.
We'll get it queued up. So what we're gonna do here, everybody? Yeah, this is so funny that we're doing this.
So
We
against.
are-
Oh, you know what though? YouTube they have a new system before you upload a video that
Oh,
goes through
jeez.
a verification
Oh,
process now
jeez.
that looks for copyright material.
Oh, jeez.
So we could do it.
We might get pulled down.
We might lose the entire stream. So I don't want to take that chance because our
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't want to do it.
No, that's fine. Okay.
So anyway, just YouTube it.
Yes.
Chasing Amy, Silent Bob speech. There's like 4 different versions of it.
It's so good.
I'm gonna watch it after this because I'm feeling
We're
passionate.
gonna
now.
watch it together. Okay. With that, I want to remind everybody one last time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you deeply. If you are watching us on our YouTube at Salt of the Streets, leave us a comment, like it, share it with all your friends so they know where to go to find unbiased information. If you are watching this afterwards, same thing, comment, like it, share it. If you are listening to us in a podcast form, leave us a rating and a review. And if you screenshot the rating and send it, we'll give you $5 off a t-shirt. If you can recognize this closing line that I'm about to deliver, I'll send you a free t-shirt if you're the first person to do it. If you can tell me where it came from. You can find all of these things on our website at saltofthestreets.com. We have our own personal social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter, and then alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Alfie on both those things. We have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, YouTube Salt of the Streets, fuck Facebook at Salt of the Streets. Salt of the Street commentary said that. That's it. With that, Colin, are you ready?
I hope.
I could choke the life out of you and never change a shade.
That's dark.
Dun, dun, dun.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.